Hi and welcome back to AATV Live. I'm your host Tom Anvil Hibbard. On Friday during the COVID lockdown, so standard caveats apply. All the greyhounds have just coming back into the front room where I do my streaming after their dinner. So hello Flo, how you doing? Today we're going to carry on our slightly aborted talk from Monday about the state of the game in 2020 and how we got there. Sadly Phil can't join us today, but I've got a fine replacement, Mr. Vin Diesel himself, Gareth Gadge Harvey. How you doing, guys?
I like that, Tom. There's good music on the intro. I wonder who made that.
I think it was by a band called Renoise, mate. I found them on the internet somewhere.
Really, really good.
So, what have you guys been up to anything this week? Doesn't have to be Airsoft related. Gadge, you've been wearing weird Russian gas masks again?
Yeah, Call of Duty inspired me to do a is it J12 type loadout, but it's going to be ridiculous to play in. I've got to try and bulletproof these lenses.
You could probably just go as far as BB proof them. I don't know if you need to go full bulletproof.
yeah.
BB.
Ben, have you been painting little men's again or anything?
I haven't actually. No, I've not really done a lot this week. I put some expanding foam in a hole in the roof at one point. That was about it, really. I've had a very boring week as far as things have gone. It's not been that great. I hope you've all had a much more interesting time than I have, really.
Gaz, I think you got a delivery this week, didn't you?
Yeah, I've been buying some new skate stuff, so I'm just waiting for the last of that to arrive before I can stare out the window hoping I could go out skating again, really.
Well, most of my week's been dominated by my new 3D printer, which is a new toy, but I'm going to try and make some vaguely Airsoft related stuff for it. So the first thing I printed was this little benchy, which is like one of the things little doggy. And then I printed a mount for my Psyonix camera, so I could Picatinny rail mount. So
nice.
Hopefully do some filming at night, or maybe even use it in a game or two. And then I printed. This is going to get really obscure, but some of you guys will really like this. This is a. Let me just put myself big. So if you're really into kind of retro Airsoft, retro ARs, you might think this looks a bit like one of the old Aimpoint 2000s, 3000s, 5000s that Delta were using back in the early 90s. But it isn't. It's a Comp M2 standard clone, and I've just 3D printed this little back bit to stick on it. There'd be another little scope ring there. So, just little bits and bobs to...
They didn't use those in Black Hawk Down, though.
No, they used the Comp M2s because they were long since out of production. So it depends whether you're going for an actual build, or it's one of those things, isn't it? Are you going for a reality build, or are you going for a movie build? One of those things.
Oh, yeah.
And then the other thing that happened this week was I've got the SEMA CM009B in. So if you want to learn a bit more about that, my live stream is archived on the channel. In short, other than some minor external differences from a real one, it's pretty good. And it turns out it's got a MOSFET in it, a microswitch trigger, and a quick change spring. So quite impressed for 170 quid.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really good to see that kind of people kind of putting that investment back into kind of older looking airsoft guns as well. It's been a long time coming, really.
Yeah, you tend to see a dearth of like sort of very tactical modern ARs and also AKs and actually proper decent stuff and like the retro stuff I love. It can be hard to get. I mean, there was Tokyo Marui did a lot of old guns years ago, but they weren't that good by modern standards,
Cool. So for our topic today, we're going to be talking about, obviously, state of the game, but specifically we're going to talk about two main things. We're going to talk about Airsoft in social media and the impact that's had on the game. And we're also going to talk about barriers to entry, or lack of, in Airsoft these days. It was very different back when most of us started playing. So I'll start off with the first question to the guys. I'm probably going to get some quite polarising reactions to this one, which is, how do you think social media, in particular Facebook, Instagram and YouTube, has affected Airsoft? Anyone want to kick me off? Gaz has got a fairly strong opinion on it, so let's maybe go with Gaz.
Well, I think the thing to understand is that social media really only took over from what was already established as Airsoft forums that had been around since the sort of mid to late 90s. We'd had Airsoft forums online. Airsoft was actually one of the first hobbies that really sort of integrated an online chat platform among players. And I think the large part of that is because of the small amount of players in the UK that we actually had, made it so that we could actually communicate quite efficiently online. But so what social media has done is certainly made it more visible to the casual browser. It's certainly made it so that you can find Airsoft a lot easier without meaning to.
Okay, yeah.
And that's not necessarily a good thing.
Okay, so should we dig a bit in? So Ben, go ahead.
Sorry, just to add that you can find it without meaning to. It also means you can see it out of context a little bit more as well. Whereas if it was on a forum, you'd probably, like the old forums of old where you'd have threads and somebody would actually be going in and they'd have the authority to go in and clean things up and categorize things a little bit better. And if something was just complete shit and, didn't really reflect anything in a good light, they could actually just clean it all up and get rid of it. Now, you can see sort of a disembodied comment on a Facebook page or somebody can kind of go on a bit of a rampage and represent things in pretty much any light they want, and it's easy for Karen on Facebook to come along and see it out of context, lift it into a new context entirely, and make everyone look like a psychopath or something like that. But yeah, it's not like it used to be. Too many laymen can see it.
Yeah. I mean, it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? I mean, when, again, like Gaz, started on the Airsoft forums, and they weren't all sunshine and loveliness. You get some real dicks on there, and the moderators could be absolute dicks. They could pretty much cyberbully someone to leave the hobby, but it was a smaller community. What you didn't have on the forums, and what you tend to get on Facebook, and again, this is a double-edged sword, it's a free market on Facebook. Anyone can post anything up and do their own videos. Video wasn't around that much, and there is that cult of personality, sort of YouTube star kind of thing, and I think the good thing about Facebook is it's immediate answers and it's accessible to people who want to get into the hobby. But I worry sometimes that they're seeing some people projecting an image of Airsoft that isn't really there. And I think we're going to talk about that later. But for me, it's in some ways it's wonderful having lots of social media access to Facebook. But I do worry, like you guys are saying, about every time some nutter does something gun related to the RIF, it gets posted all over Airsoft social media, and it's not Airsoft at all. It's not the game. That's actually a firearms offence.
Well, ironically, the day after we did our UK Airsoft law video, a gentleman was arrested down in Chatham for loosing blank firers off the top of a tower block. So, and I'm sure he'll be done on imitation firearms offences, but it still doesn't help.
Yeah, and a lot of the forums I moderate, I had to delete posts about RIF-related crime about 10 or 15 times a day. Because everybody thinks so original. Oh, look at this guy. Who was it? Own up. Who shot the guns out of Chatham? And I'm going, guys, this is an Airsoft forum. Yes, they have got Airsoft riffs in their house, but it's not.
Don't associate it.
Yeah? Sorry,
don't force our own association to it.
Yeah.
This is the thing. Media will do that without our help. If we link us to that, then media will jump on it.
Yeah. You can go down the pub and have a couple of pints and you don't get associated with the guy that's had 8 cans of special brew and punched his wife here. It's totally different worlds.
What you were saying about that actual offence with the guy with the blank firers actually was immediately after our discussion and after we discussed realistic and non-realistic imitation firearms. What was interesting was, yes, he had 2 blank firers that were both imitation firearms. They were blue slide. But he also had 2 airsoft guns. And they were imitation firearms too. There were no realistic imitation firearms in that offence. Yeah. And that highlights what we were discussing with the fact that imitation firearms are actually a dangerous workaround that has no place in Airsoft whatsoever.
So is that linked potentially to... So obviously when back in the day when we had the forums, there was no VCR. There was no UCARA, there was no defence needed. There were no two-tones because that just didn't exist. Do we think potentially that the more publicly accessible nature of Airsoft now on social media has led to a greater demand or impatience from players before they get a RIF?
Definitely. I think a lot of people want to jump into the game fully kitted up. I remember going to the first game, some old surplus combats and a jacket, having a rental and having a great day. Whereas a lot of people aren't playing now. Players, on social media with so much kit, and they feel they've got to look like in SEAL Team 6 before they can go to their first game.
Yeah, I mean, one of the first things that people said to me when I first got into Airsoft was like, it's like paintball, but you can have your own kit. So it is kind of one of the attractions of Airsoft, the fact that you can buy your own kit, you can take it home, you can keep it, you can customize it and things like that. For most people, talked about paintball quite a lot over the last couple of things, have, referenced it. But it is kind of the more mainstream analog to airsoft, isn't it? It's pretty much what most people associate, when most people draw that comparison.
To be fair, though,
I
Ben,
think it's just...
you say that, but paintball has the same subsections as airsoft does. But what everybody remembers with paintball is going and hiring and having a stag do or a party or whatever, where in actual fact, paintball still has milsim. They still have their own guns.
Yeah.
Paintball has
whole
competition,
thing,
and they still have their own guns.
Yeah.
Etc. Etc. Or sorry, not guns, markers.
Yeah.
But
we're clever calling them markers. Very clever doing that. I was part of the paintball scene in the late 80s, early 90s, and the change to be a sport with markers made it look acceptable to the police, acceptable to families. Mrs. Miggins wasn't scared of it; she understood it.
God, Mrs. Miggins.
Yeah. She's back again.
That fucking
Definitely going to do that T-shirt. Okay, so where we go. So let's think about. So I think when we all started, we all had to be invited, right?
Yes.
So you had to basically be acknowledged by someone that already played as not being a dick, and you were invited along to this semi-secret club of people that were doing this activity in the woods. I think a lot of people.
I got away with it though.
Did you? Even though you were a dick, right?
Yeah.
Well, you're still a dick, but we can't really help that, can we? Do we think that potentially that certainly things on Facebook, which is, even though people have moved on from that as a platform, has made it so accessible that that's no longer the case? Are people just turning up without that invite?
I'd say without a doubt. Without a doubt.
definitely.
I've seen it before in the past. People rock up. They've never really had a game of airsoft, but they rock up and they've got these random things they've managed to acquire online, or they've bought from somebody, and they tell them, "Oh yeah, let's have a go at this." I mean, I guess that's not any difference to how it would have been in the past, but but these people rock up and they have there is a bar set to them. They've seen some guy, I won't mention anyone in particular or anything like that, but they've seen some guy's video. They've got a prior conception of what airsoft will entail for them. Whether they've got the equipment to achieve that, or whether what they conceive is going to be their experience, if that's even achievable, it might be a completely out of scope video that they'd be watching that's been really heavily edited to cut out all of the hard work you have to put in. They basically just feel like they turn up at Airsoft and reap these rewards, and they can make their own video on their GoPro, and they can whack it on YouTube and suddenly end up with 500,000 followers. It's probably not that. It's not going to be that, but that expectation is planted firmly.
Let's dive into that a bit, since you've opened the Pandora's box there, Ben. And actually, English Kiwi in the comments has just said it. We get social media companies like Unilad sharing airsoft sniper headshot compilations, which really doesn't, in my mind, certainly doesn't help. Does that give people? And then now I've done a bit of gameplay footage, mainly for kind of site promotions when I've been there. It's a really difficult thing to do. It's putting together an exciting, interesting gameplay video takes quite a lot of money because you need multiple cameras.
It's a lot of skill.
It's a real skill. It's really so. I'm not going to disparage any of that kind of stuff, because actually it's really difficult. But do we think, very leading question, that gives people an unrealistic expectation of what gameplay is actually going to be like?
100%.
Yeah, I think you get two types of airsoft video. You get the very well produced, very well edited, watch me do a 10-person kill streak video, or ex-Royal Marine owns airsofters kind of thing. And then you get the ones I hate, which is the wobbly 15-minute head cam of someone running around the woods panting. That's
probably more realistic, though, isn't it? And it's funny, isn't it? Because you know what it's actually like, but I'm the same. You prefer to watch the heavily edited stuff, even though you know it's complete nonsense. Not nonsense, you know what I mean?
The balance stuff. So people like... there's a guy that runs an airsoft site in the States that has a good channel. He does a lot of sniping, to be fair to him as well. But he gives a really balanced and overall view of what the scenario and the day's event is all about.
Probably talking about Swamp Sniper.
Exactly, yeah. And he's a great example. If anyone said to me, what's a good airsoft YouTube channel, I would say that one, 100%. Because he gives you the overall, what is the whole day about, and not just the glorious headshots and this, that, and the other. But also, the YouTube thing, I think, has also, and I've certainly seen it from the industry side, the requests I get from people who have never airsofted that want sponsorship and this, that, and the other to start a YouTube channel, because people think that instead of starting Airsoft because they want to airsoft, they're starting Airsoft as a way of building a YouTube channel.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we've seen this, especially from people who used to do a lot of gaming footage, and for a while gaming footage died down. They changed to Airsoft, and then that didn't work after
So
a
you're
while.
talking
So
about
they went
computer
back to
gaming?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So people like Level Cap Gaming, who was originally a gamer, he did Airsoft footage for a while because he was doing Airsoft as a hobby as well, to be fair to him. But he found that it wasn't working so great, so he went back to just purely gaming. And there are there's lots of examples of people who came from the gaming YouTube side and started Airsoft as an expansion of their YouTube rather than because they wanted that hobby, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm really just to kind of expand on that and maybe to even digress a little bit. There's a guy in the comments on YouTube called Rageophile, and he's just said, "Do you not find all gameplay videos are very samey? Once you've seen them all, you've seen you've seen them all." And I've got to be honest, like I'm pretty much uninterested in watching gameplay footage. I don't really care about it.
Apart from Swamp Sniper, I don't watch any Airsoft content. Most reviewers, I find, bore the living shit out of me.
I'll go into that in a minute because I've got some opinions.
Same. But certainly with gameplay footage, most gameplay footage I find is over-edited, extremely biased, one-sided, shows a narrative they want you to see, is usually topped off by a clickbait title to encourage you to watch it on something that's completely unrelated or is a footnote at the end of the video. So, no, I'd rather not click on someone's video and find out that it's crap because I've just given
I think one of the weird things is, like, you can watch, not that I'm really all that bothered about football, but you can watch Match of the Day and you can compute and understand that Match of the Day's highlight reel is a highlight reel. And I think that might be down to the way that they edit it quite well.
It's also added
in a convention. Yeah, it's a convention that they do. You go through a highlight reel, you know it's a highlight reel, you know that isn't a game of football. I think perhaps a lot of the time, a lot of the reason Airsoft gameplay videos actually are pretty shit is because people are trying to have a good game of Airsoft and also trying to video it at the same time. Yeah. There is nothing else I know that you can video that you can actually participate in. Let your imagination run wild. Things I may have tried this with, but there are very few things that you can participate in and also film at the same time and get decent results from either end. You know, you can either participate or you can video it. It's like you can't do both. Yeah, so maybe if you'd get quality Airsoft videos if it was filmed from a sort of a third person. It's not even. Is it a third person perspective?
Over the shoulder sort of thing, so you see the player.
Or not even over the shoulder, actually filmed in a cinematic manner rather than filmed in a.
We tried certain videos. What reminds me of is, you know, when you go to a gig and there's a sea of cameras and iPads being held up, and people who film the gig because they're enjoying it, and they're never going to watch it again, right?
When are you going to watch it back?
Just remember you're fucking there, you know? It's like it's a gig. Same with Airsoft. You have to film what you're doing. Just get into the game. Play the bloody thing.
So it's an interesting point from Purple Helmet in the comments. What you guys are discussing isn't just Airsoft. They went through exactly the same thing in the serious gym scene, bodybuilding scene in the 90s. You know, you want fame, sponsorship for fuck all. Very similar to modern entitled Airsoft. From my perspective, it's interesting. I like filmmaking is really difficult, and I didn't, my channel is not gameplay, and I didn't start from a filmmaking or media basis or anything. I started very much as me and Gav started the channel in association with Airsoft Action magazine in order to comment on that month's magazine. Now that format very quickly disappeared because it just wasn't that interesting, quite frankly. And we went and did stuff that was very different. And it's taken me 2 years to get to the point where I've started even doing slightly more jazzy shots and angles because I just don't feel confident or don't believe in myself enough. But whatever. But gameplay is really difficult. But having now got a bit more experience of cameras and angles, I can see where the cuts are. I can see that the guy's gone through that doorway. He's cut back to his camera, which is looking at him, and then he's cut back that way. Now, why has he done that? He's done that because when he went through the door, he's done that 2 or 3 different times, and what he's looking for is the best expectation. And he's looking for the best result. And he's gone through the next door and they've cut again from a different camera. Why has he done that? Okay, one of those jump cuts are more exciting filmmaking, but two, it probably wasn't a linear timeline at that point.
No.
It probably was different occasions. So
also
So those kill streaks, that 10-person kill streak, was probably 5, 6, 7 times through that building to get to that point to make it look good.
I think we can quite easily here get into a very negative look into YouTube in the hobby overall, but I think it's very important to point out that there is a positive way in which YouTube and social media can help Airsoft. One is by showing a very balanced view of a subject that people are genuinely interested in. So be it a game, like I suggested with Swamp Sniper, or there's some other people out there as well, who can show you what a certain kind of event is actually like. And that includes using footage from people on the other side or from marshal staff or outside press staff that are at the event, so you get an idea of what the event's like, so people can then look on YouTube and go, oh, I'm interested in going to one of these events and see what it's like. The other one is informational with facts, so factual Airsoft review channels, factual gear review channels, factual help guide channels, that sort of thing. So like you guys have done the hop up and ammo and that sort of thing. That's really useful for someone who's starting Airsoft. You want, when someone types Airsoft into YouTube, I want that kind of thing to come up as the top, not watch cheater get blasted in the face.
Yeah, unfortunately, the way the YouTube algorithm works, my content will always be not up unless they're very. I've got a bit clever. I'm starting to use a bit more kind of tags in the titles and stuff, so to try and do searches. People what best BB, and hopefully my stuff will start coming up a bit more. But it's a massively competitive minefield. But I think you're very right. And someone in the comments has pointed out Paul Narroway. He's just come from that other sport with markers. He says he's been really impressed with how people are with advice and links for kit. And actually, it can be a really great community.
Yeah, it can, and I think we can show the best of Airsoft. I mean, we are railing a bit about the things we dislike, but there are videos out there that show people what kit you need, just they're not publicised as well. And if we get people seeing those videos, say, go into your first Airsoft game, you need iPro, you need boots, don't worry about a gun, all that sort of stuff. If those are the videos that came up first when you searched, it'd be great, but they're not.
Exactly.
Because you get, watch me hurt this person,
I think.
But then also, I think that it's also, you're always going to have the extremes that are most viewed. So you're always going to get the most retweets or shares on something that has an extreme view, whether it be extreme for good or extreme for bad. Yeah. You don't ever get that sort of honest middle ground that gets repeated, because someone isn't going, hey, look at this fucking twat, when it comes to a nice middle ground balanced video. They're only doing that when it's on with an extreme view or extreme action.
Actually, someone's had a comment saying that they didn't wish cheater videos, and they're an extreme part of Airsoft. They show the worst of the sport. I think they're right that cheater videos really. Me and Tom always said a good safety brief has the positives. You say, you can do this, you should do this. Not, you can't do this, you shouldn't do that. Yeah. So showing people breaking the rules in a video is just counterproductive to a good community and a good harmony in the game, in my view, anyway.
Yeah, for sure, 100%.
I totally understand why people do it. I totally understand why people make them, because they get views, they get clicks, and they get money. Most of the big channels, I think a lot of people seem to forget this. Most of the big channels, and Gaz talked about it earlier, they're not airsofters. Okay, so they're businessmen.
They're content makers.
They're content makers, therefore businessmen that happen to be in airsoft at the time. They may really like airsoft, it may be their hobby, but their primary goal is not showing airsoft. Their primary goal is making money, and I totally understand that. And when you put things in that context, I think it's.
But viewers need to understand that as well.
Yeah, and I think they need to be a bit more honest with those. Something I was going to say about the kind of content I create is more factual, and I think a lot of us, and from my perspective, and I talked about it earlier, I had this kind of thing about it's a bit of self-belief about the kind of content that I make, and how let's just use one camera, let's not use lots of cuts. And actually now I'm going to start doing stuff which is a bit more exciting, which uses slightly more multiple camera angles.
But that's production quality rather than a content spin.
Yeah, and then and compress the timeline a bit. I did it recently with our Russian ration review. Gadge.
That was hour and a half, wasn't it, when we did it? And we cut it down to about 25, 30 minutes without losing any of the fun out of it.
Yeah, because you just take all the dead air out. But before that, I'd have just put the whole thing out virtually unedited because I was that's about that. And also, there's an onus on people like me to name things in a way which gets them attention from YouTube, and to use tags properly. You don't have to be massively clickbaity about it, but just be a bit more. What are people searching for? I think, and that way you can bring people in a bit more.
I watched a video. Sorry, Gaj. I watched a video the other day. It was actually a T-Rex Arms video, and it was a live stream they did a couple of weeks back, probably a month ago or now. And basically the topic got onto how do you make it in social media with your hobby and things like that. How do you go from just having a hobby channel, what is it that makes it? And Lucas actually said you've got to pick one thing. Basically, you've got to pick whether you're making entertainment or you're making information. If you're making educational information for people, you can mix the two a little bit, but you really have to decide what you're doing. Are you making something for the lols? And are you farting around in a kind of extension of Jackass or something like that, or are you making something that people will watch to entertain them? So like the opposite, you watch something on YouTube and it's somebody prattling around like a viral video, or you'll watch something on YouTube and it's how to fix your washing machine when the red light comes on. And they're two totally different things, and they could both be successful YouTube channels. They could both pull a lot of people in. But one of them's about education and the other one's about entertainment. And I guess a lot of people kind of get confused between, because of the way the Airsoft videos are put across, is this educating you about what Airsoft's like, or is it entertaining you whilst you can't play Airsoft?
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. And a lot of the stuff we've talked about is really, it's not really informational, it's not educational, it's entertainment. And I think if those channels were a little bit more honest about what they'd done, I think that would go a long way. And
I think our demographic here is just not interested in that sort of second-hand watching of Airsoft games. I think we've played enough Airsoft games. It'd be very, very unlikely that we'll take the time and effort to go and watch a recorded rerun of an Airsoft game. You mean you might watch it and be like, oh, look, there's me doing something cool, or there's me falling over.
Is missing.
Yeah, I think Tom got with the editing thing Tom was on about. One thing I've noticed is like we have like gone against the whole sort of like death kill, watch me do this sniper videos. But in reality, if you're doing airsoft sniping, a video of you lying in a bush for like 45 minutes at a time and then pulling the trigger once would be dull as fuck, right? So you've got to edit it down, and I understand that. But unfortunately, that the guy who wants to be an airsoft sniper and goes out and buys his first VSR or whatever, goes there, is expecting to get 10 kills in 45 minutes. And he's lying in a bush and he's getting bitten by insects or he's getting dirty or wet or whatever. And he goes, oh, fuck this, it's rubbish. It is that unreal.
We can't see shit. He's steamed up.
Yeah.
I'm just going to hit the comment section for a bit because the guy, and we'll go back to the topic. So Dan asks, have I got any more ration reviews lined up? I do. I've got a whole drawer full of stuff I need to do. YouTube hates them, and it completely fucks my algorithm. So I'm not going to do them. I basically get no viewers, and as soon as I get no viewers, it doesn't then share it with extra people. So I love doing them. So, but there will be few and far between because it will just completely screw my algorithms. I've got an Italian one and a Polish one I want to do. Really desperate to do those. And Chris, we talked about pixelation of faces in the last live stream at quite some length. So if you want to look at either part one or part two, I was literally
just replying to that one.
Yeah, thanks Ben for answering that. So we were talking about YouTube. Let's talk about reviews because something I hold quite close to my heart, and it's quite interesting. So, what do we have any general views on kind of people reviewing kit before I kick off?
Massive views, Tom. I mean, I think you'll agree with me on this. I've worked in the airsoft industry as a reviewer for the best part of 10 to 12 years, maybe longer. And while I've always tried to be impartial and say, this is really good, this is why it's good, this is bad, this is why it's bad, in the past I've had pressure from editors or other people to go, oh, you can't say that about that product, so they won't send any more for review. So you can't be objective and honest. And I think most people review things they've bought or been given, and because they're excited about it, they just go, oh, this is bloody brilliant, this is the best thing ever. And, you know, once you've paid your money for it, you're not going to go, oh, actually, it's shit, because you don't want to admit that you've bought a lemon. Very few people will do that. And what I used to do in my magazine reviews, I'd write to the guys if it was bad and say, look, this is bad. I can say it's bad, or I can drop the review till you fixed it, and I'll give you 6 months to fix it. And I'm going to say, we'd had a grenade once that was very, very dangerous because the pins were loose. And my friend Kelly had to review it, Femme Fatale. And she said, Gadget, it's terrible. I don't know what to do. It's unsafe. And I said, tell him it's unsafe. And we dropped the review, wrote back to the guys. They fixed it, sent a new one, and then we printed the review 4 weeks later and printed a point saying that, but this reviewed late because the pin was unsafe. And that's how reviews should be done, in my opinion.
Well, I sent something to Tom once and it didn't work, and he sent it back and he said, I'm not gonna write a review on this until we know what's wrong with it. And I went, no, that's fine. That's the way it should be. Don't write. Right, there's a difference between what's a review and what's a look at a product or a product promotion. And now there are laws in place that state you should make it really fucking obvious what's what. There's still a lot on YouTube that it doesn't say that. And unfortunately, I'm seeing it in printed media too. And it's the fact that they should be held to the same standards as a video reviewer. Say what is a product review and what is a product promotion. If you can't say a good thing about a product, tell the person that sent you the product and choose not to print anything at all, rather than saying that it's great when it's not. If I send something to someone and they say, there's a problem with this, that, and the other, and I go, okay, well, send it me back, I'll have a look. And it's either going to be, perhaps that one was just a faulty one, and I'll have a look at it. Perhaps there's actually a problem with the production run, or perhaps the person reviewing it was incapable, which I've had in the past, by the way.
When you glad you said that. I was about to butt in and bubble over. One of the biggest bugbears for me is people doing reviews on stuff. What the fuck do you know about the thing you're talking about? You have any idea about how long have you been into this? You've been doing this you've not got any basis for comparison. No basis for comparison at all. You've just got a product and you're saying if you like it or not. If you can't compare it to another similar product, you can't say you like it better than another one. You can't actually say if it's good. Anything can fulfill the purpose that it's made to do, but unless you've got something to compare it against, you can't say how well it's fulfilling that purpose at all. All guns will shoot a BB, and you can say, yeah, my new gas pistol was brilliant. Yeah, they generally are, but have you actually tried a good one?
If I send out a product to review, I will put something somewhere so that I know if it's actually been fired. Because if that product hasn't been used and it's sent back to me and then a review goes live, I know never to trust that reviewer. Yeah. And I don't mean never to trust it as a person supplying a product. I mean never to trust it as a reader.
I just get around that by never sending it back, guys.
Yeah. Your former employer used to do that a lot, but there we go.
I can second you on that, Gaz. I mean, I know for one magazine I wrote for a long time ago, it's a military-type magazine, it wasn't Airsoft. We had products to sample, and my boss would go, oh, I've got like 15 camelbacks for you to review. Can you say which one's the best? So I was like, how the fuck am I going to fill up camelback?
You'd be pissing for fucking days, wouldn't you? Imagine that. I've tried out 15 camelbacks. I've drunk 9 litres of water.
Yes, test goggles to test. And I used them to put new fencing in, like wearing them for 10 minutes at a time while I was digging bits. Because you can't test them realistically. You can't put them through the rigours that you get in an Airsoft game in the hour you've got in that magazine to review it.
Yeah.
You use it once or twice, but also reviewers don't tell you, okay, that gun's all right, it fires well, it's this FPS. What's it like after 6 months? No one goes back and says, do you know what? This is a workhorse. It's stood up the test of time. I ran over it by accident. It still works. It's always a first impression. It's not actually if that gun's any good, because you need to know if it you.
I mean, let's be fair, though. Let's be fair. It's very difficult to turn things out at the pace that people require it to be turned out. Bluetooth headphones, okay? I've got a new set of Bluetooth headphones on. They're bone conduction things, so I can hear what's going on around me. I can hear the stream. It doesn't interfere with anything. There's very little sound leakage and things like that. I finally plumped for some of these after spending probably over the last 18 months, probably about 300 quid on various different Bluetooth headphones from, I'll just get some cheap 20 quid ones and being very disappointed with them. I'll spend a little bit more and get some over-ear ones because I really don't want to spend the money. I'll get some knockoff AirPod things. I've got these things that I'm wearing now, and I should have just got these in the first place because I know they're the ones that I want. It's said in the product specification that they are the ones that I want. But me being me, I've gone through them all. But I could probably write a reasonable review on some Bluetooth headphones now, having tested some from the bottom to the top to finally finding the ones that I want. The sound quality on these isn't perfect, but it's good enough for what I want them for. And it's also good enough. The trade-off is good, but I would only know that trade-off is good because I've gone through a whole spectrum of various different things. And that's, like I say, that's taken me 18 months, and I've spent quite a lot of money on various different sets. I couldn't do that on a monthly magazine deadline or something like that. So the cool thing about YouTube videos and the cool thing about YouTube reviews is I could probably do a video on Bluetooth headphones now and publish it, and it would be way more informative than something that's produced for a commercial magazine, because I've just done this because I give a shit about it. I care about what I'm doing. I'm not doing it because I've got to turn something out in the next couple of weeks to fill some pages. That's the problem.
It's really tough, and the reason it's really tough is initial engagement. So if there's the best one. So look at my channel, right? Actually, so most of the highest stuff is some of our testing, but a lot of it's gun reviews, and I don't really do traditional gun reviews because I don't, for all the reasons we've just talked about them, because I think they're bollocks personally. But still, it generates traffic, so therefore it generates. Well, I don't make much money, but it generates. It makes you feel good because you get clicks and you get likes and you get engagement. You get the most engagement for a new product. So the fastest you can get it out, the better, right? In terms of getting engagement. And let's be totally honest, that's why I live streamed buying this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. So, and it literally, an hour after the UPS man left, I was live streaming the unboxing of this. But what I didn't talk about was anything to do with its performance, because I haven't tested it. I haven't even put it on the range. I haven't owned it for 3 months. All I talked about was the externals, because I could do that. And I didn't even really talk about external quality. What I talked about was how close is this to the real thing?
Yeah.
Because that's a framework and a context I could talk about, and that's absolutely fine. And in that live stream, I said I can't recommend this because I haven't even put a battery in it yet.
Yeah,
It's like I haven't pulled the trigger.
I think some people review stuff, Tom, having saying it's good, having never put in a battery as well.
yeah, exactly. I know they
Let's be fair.
I know they do, because I've talked to shop owners about it. Because I've been approached by.
Let's be fair though. Some people, you will buy some things. Gaz, you've got a very similar M16. You've got it, and you've never used it.
No.
But it's great.
We're doing a show and tell earlier, yeah.
It's for what you want of it. It's not about it. You can say, this is a great product. I love this product for these aspects. I don't really care if it shoots well or not. You've got to remember that sometimes you're reviewing a product for a specific person. Like, I used to go through a lot of things and I'd say that this product's not for everyone, and people kind of miss it a little bit. They look at Airsoft media and expect it to apply to them completely. When this is the great thing I like about your channel, Tom, is that you do stuff that you enjoy yourself. You do stuff that you focus on products that you know that you enjoy and the people that are watching your channel will enjoy, and that means you can talk about it from their perspective. If somebody sends you a G&G ARP9, it might be a very, very good and capable gun, but you'll go, this is a load of piss wank because I'm not interested in it whatsoever. I don't even care about this. You might as well have sent me some toilet rolls.
It's partly why we ended up splitting the channel off from Airsoft Action, because increasingly I was being asked to review stuff that I just did not give a shit about. And it's very hard to be convincing about a product that you just do not care about.
Yeah, I mean,
and my integrity, and also there is, and we've talked about it, and I'll be quite honest about it. There's the commercial pressure to be positive about a product, and again, I wasn't prepared to do that. So that's a large reason why the channel went the way it is. And now, I'm not going to say that's an Airsoft thing. That's commercial media everywhere. That's just reality. Being nice.
Technology is even worse.
Being nice about products for advertising, it's just the way it works. Sorry, Gaz.
Yeah, Tom, can I just say that at that time we also put a positive spin on it, because the product we were given, we couldn't say this is great, but we did do a video about using those sort of products in Airsoft and going, hey, isn't it really good fun to do let's imagine we were given a revolver. Isn't a revolver cool because you're playing on hard mode?
Yeah.
You can put a spin on it. What we didn't do is a negative video, because that doesn't help.
I think we're all old enough to know and mature enough to understand that maybe something isn't for me or it isn't for you, but it's probably for that lad over there that's just got into Airsoft. He's absolutely fucking shitting himself with excitement with everything that he touches and holds, and he just wants to experience that. He said that will give you a great experience of it. It doesn't cost too much. It's not going to set you back. You know, it's not like a collector's revolver or something like that. It's not going to set you back nearly 600 quid and it's going to break really easily. No, it's actually 120 quid. It will give you a feeling of what a revolver's like. It won't conk out immediately. It'll just be cool to use for a bit. You'll probably get bored of it in 3 months and move on to the next thing. Job done. Yeah. Great for that.
Sorry, Gaz.
I've written very few reviews over the years. A, because I really can't be asked. B, because it has to be something I really care about to actually bother writing a review about it, because I have to bother uploading photos and this, that, and the other, and putting words down in the first place. So even though I have ready access to new products all of the time, and quite often products before they're ever going to be seen by public, before they go to IWA or whatever, I have still only ever written reviews on products that I have bought myself. And those few times I've written those reviews, I have written a first impression. I've done it on a forum rather than social media, so it doesn't disappear. I've written it on a forum in a first impression format and then gone back each month and updated that review for at least 12 months. Yeah. And that is how I do a review, because that's a product I care about. And people want to know, if 12 months down the line, has it blown itself to pieces, or is it still as good as you thought it was when you took it out of the box? And I start with a first impression look. Oh, well, it feels like this. It looks like this. It's, this, that, and the other. How's it shoot? Don't know yet. I have to wait until I actually use it a few times to know. And then later on, I can say, right, after the first time of using it, I know it does this. And after the third time using it, I found that this is wearing and that's not, and I update it that way, because that's the only way of doing a peer review of something like that.
You have to show the longevity. Like one of the comments from Mark was saying that he liked the fact when Tom upgraded his recoil, he was very honest and said, it's good. Oh, it's a little bit better. But is it worth it? No. And there's a progression there. You're going like, I've got this gun out of the box. What's it like? I put this in, and you're showing people a journey in Airsoft. That sounds a bit wanky, I know, but and I think that's important. You have to show that the longevity of the product, because everything's going to be great when you open out the box, but has it got lots of swarf in the gearbox and it's going to grind itself to death?
Yeah, I've got my LCT recoil long-term review coming up probably in a week or two. Sneak peek, don't buy it. It will shit itself and destroy itself. But it's
brilliant.
But it is brilliant for about 3,000 BBs.
Can you pop up a £900 upgrades banner on the top of this screen and probably tag Scott Allen in it as well?
So one thing I will add, and this is kind of being fair to people, is that I've already said about the immediacy of trying to get some content out. It's also the commercial realities. So I've made to date from this YouTube channel. Are you ready for it? £169. Guess what I bought?
Ooh.
Okay, so thank you to the viewers. You paid for this, but £169, and I can tell you, I'm 25 grand down in cameras and lights and travel and guns, and so it's a lot. Yeah. So this is a hobby. This isn't a commercial. It's not a commercial proposition. And I'm very lucky that I'm pretty much supported by my partner, so I can do this sort of stuff. If this was my job, I would have to make very different decisions. And that's where the kind of the influencer thing comes into, which I think we'll segue into in a minute. Because when you're being paid by someone, that's a completely different story. It's very easy for me to be independent because I buy the stuff I want, I review it, and I can tell you if it's rubbish or not because I really don't care about someone else's opinion. However, if you are being paid or you're taking advertising money, that's a very difficult model to exist on. So should we slide a bit into a kind of influencer model?
Exactly, Tom.
I think influencers are where things get very grey because they don't always make it obvious that they're a paid influencer. So whilst you have paid reviewers, and we know that when you guys are working for Airsoft Action or before Airsoft International, and you mentioned Femme Fatale, we know that she's a paid reviewer, and she charges for her review services and promotion services, as it were, rather than review services. That's fine because we understand that that is paid promotion.
Kelly also flags all of her paid promotional material.
She does, exactly. Whereas there are a lot of other influencers out there who are supported and who are paid or given product in kind for a positive media response, if you know what I mean.
Let's be honest, the getting free stuff model is also on that road as well. So, but and if a supplier is giving you free stuff and they might not be paying you, you're probably going to be nice about their stuff. That's the way it works.
Yeah.
You should probably also flag your channel, but this is a joint promotion with such and such company. But as Gaz says, that doesn't happen as much as it probably should do. And then the other thing that happens quite a lot, I've been contacted by a couple of shops to do this, is to review guns but don't fire them because they want to sell them. They want to put them back on the shelf and then sell them to a customer. And I flat out said no because that's just. But I know that happens. It happens a lot,
When we've sent out guns in the past for review, we don't expect them to come back trashed, and we expect them to actually come back, but we don't expect them to come back as brand new. And I have checked, like I said earlier on, to ensure that they don't come back as brand new, because if they did, it makes that review completely invalid. And if they spark something that later becomes an obvious flaw, not only does it damage the reviewer, but it also damages the us as well, because people think that then we've paid the person to make a positive review.
Yeah. I just had something about reviewing in general that I think most people don't realise. So I was the assistant editor on one mag, and I was the editor on another mag for a while. Now, actually, even though I got contract to supply this X amount of pages to that magazine per month, most of the reviewers and myself at times are on a freelance basis. And you might get paid £30 a page or £50 a page, or whatever that magazine's offering. So a 3-page article, let's be generous, that's £150. That's flat out. That doesn't include the £20 it took you to drive to a site to test the gun. It doesn't include the £15 you spent on BBs. It doesn't include your McDonald's lunch when you got there. So actually, by the time you've got and reviewed that gun, you're probably making 80 quid, right, if you're lucky. And if you're doing what I did and you do Cold War loadout reviews, I get £150. It might cost me £220 to get the loadout. Now,
that's why you should stop reviewing shit kit, Gadge.
that smells of some weird Russian cigarette.
And this is what I said when you guys were doing your Russian review. I sat downstairs today and I put your Russian review on, and I'll admit, a Russian review isn't something that super interests me. I logged in because it was you guys, and it was like, I actually don't want to sit here watching someone eat something they shouldn't eat unless they really have to.
Wasn't that bad?
I turned to my partner and went, "This is what happens when McDonald's and KFC fucking close."
But I think so. But I can understand why people do that, because they need content. They need to get their stuff out. Everyone wants validation. I love validation. I love it. I get nice comments. I love it. It's brilliant.
We all do.
That's just human nature. Okay.
Human thing.
And part of the way you get that is by getting the new shiny thing. And if you're not a big, YouTube does not pay well unless. So for me to make a living, this channel would need to be about 100 times bigger than it actually is. But there you go.
Can we flip this one round a bit?
Yes, of course.
Like, we're talking about influencers. When was the last time you bought something because somebody told you to buy it?
I'm really impressionable. I can see a billboard with a KFC burger on it. I need a burger.
Crotch shot.
Yeah, the camera's gone for a Burton.
In all seriousness, again, I personally don't trust influencer reviewers. If I want to know if something's good, I ask people I know have been in the industry for a while, at least 5 years, who've handled different makes, manufacturers. So if I'm going to buy a new AR, I will ask someone like Gaz, is this any good? Because I know you've seen so many different makes and models go through your hands, you can be objective about it. So personally, because I've been in the industry for a long time, I need the opinion of someone who's been there for a long time.
You're in a very privileged position there to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And also, we talk in a circle of people that vaguely know what they're talking about.
We have a lot of experience in our circle of people we chat to on a regular basis.
But for those people out there, where do they go and look? It's very, very difficult.
And it is because, what will happen is in the main groups, the common groups, UCAC and whatever else, common Facebook groups there are out there, the people who are going to respond to a post about what am best gun are going to be the loud-mouthed, constant users of social media that probably do not know the best. And those of us that have probably been around a little bit longer or have more experience with things tend to not bother commenting because we know that it's a fucking full of shit forum.
Yeah. I mean, also, those people will say, well, the gun they recommend as best gun is the one they bought, and they probably only own 2 guns.
The one they bought last.
So they won't say it's shit. So, you know, if someone says, oh, is the Slimer SBD any good? I can say, actually, it's a bit subpar because I own one, and I'm not embarrassed to say that I wouldn't have bought it if I don't know how bad it was. Tom knows how bad. I can't hit anything with it, and that's not me being a shit gun.
Would you have bothered buying a real sword, wouldn't you, for the money they cost?
Yeah, given the information I've got from people I know, and the fact that actually real sword have a good reputation as a brand, and if I could get one, yes, I probably would now. I regret buying the Simon one and skimping out and not buying the real sword.
So it's that it doesn't do its job as an airsoft gun for you. I'm just sort of searching around this one. Like, a lot of the time, people are kind of happy with something that's just like about the right sort of shape and size that they can get a couple of minutes fun from. You know, maybe because we're a little bit more mature, and the reason we buy things, you know, we're not chopping and changing super quickly. We're actually buying things to fulfill a certain purpose for a certain period of time. I don't know. It's a bit of an odd one. Like, a lot of guys seem to want to buy something, get peak performance out of it. It's like, so this is why you're getting really loads of cut down, small magazine M4 kind of things. It's because they're super efficient and very easy to shoot and shoot pretty well. And they're not really bothered about the aesthetic. You know, if I'm looking for an SLR, I'll buy an SLR and I'll just suck up the fact that it doesn't shoot that great. But I'll be more happy just because it's shaped like an SLR, because that's what I've bought.
Well, that's because you play specialist airsoft and you have a vision in your head, right? You're not an open day player, and you're not buying a gun because it's got to do everything every day. You're choosing to buy a single shot long rifle because you know it'll look good at the Gunman Cold War game. You know, most airsofters, they want to know what's the best gun for running around for 8 hours on a Saturday with reloading the least, and the battery power's got to be good. And unfortunately, that's where people get sucked down, because they're not going for what they actually want. They're going for what they're being told to have that's the best.
Yeah.
Gaz, you got something to say?
Sorry?
So you seemed like you had something you wanted to say.
No, I forgot what it was, to be fair.
I think something I want to bring up is context. So you very rarely get, when someone does a review, you very rarely get the context for which the gun is being used in. So what is it? What is it for? Is it for running around on an open day with a drum mag in because you can't be arsed reloading, or you can't afford 9 magazines? Is it to go to a Cold War game where actually the silhouette of what you look like is really important? Do you want to play some sort of nonsense arena indoors CQB smash fest? So you want some hideous HPA creation? Not that I'm biased or anything, but what is the context of that review? What is the point? You know, I'm going to ring my own bell because it's my channel and I will do. I was quite clear about why I bought this and why I wanted it and what it was for, and how I didn't actually care if it was any good inside, just like Ben talked about. I didn't care, because what I wanted was an M16A1 shaped object, and I'd worry about it later. But then I can vaguely tech, so I can sort that out. But I think the context is often missing a lot. But then I also have I like firearms. We've been talked over this, and I know how historical one. I like firearms history, and I like the way they look, and I think a lot of players potentially don't have that. So maybe it's up to us to educate people more anyway.
But Tom, I think that's because we do like firearms history, but again, the airsoft, I'm going to generalise now, but a lot of the newcomers to airsoft don't care what a gun's firearm history is. They just want something that shoots people. They're coming from a Call of Duty background. They're coming from some of the gaming background, but actually the history of whether that's got the right receiver or what is irrelevant. You know, I think we detail on these things, but for most airsofters, what they want is a high energy output and a high rate of fire.
So this is what kind of dovetails into what we were talking about the other day about on the stream we did about what actually is airsoft. And if you just want a gun that's got a fucking load of BBs in it, is it actually airsoft? Because is that even a military scenario? You know,
yeah.
it's that deep pit again, isn't
I'm definitely doing that.
You know,
I'm definitely doing that T-shirt. That'd be the first one. So where are we? So social media. Okay, so we covered off. So I think review. All I would like reviewers to be is more honest about where they got that review item from. What's expected of them to do with that review item. So let's be honest. It came from the shop. It's going back to the shop. They're going to sell it to a customer. So I'm not going to fire it, or I'm going to put 2 BBs down it. Just be honest. You know, honesty.
It's a good example of how to do it. Garantham.
Yeah. What's my relationship?
Full disclosure. What's my relationship? How have I got this item? What's happening with this item once I read it, etc. Full disclosure, and then the audience can make the decision as to whether your input on it is valid or not.
That's a really good point, guys. I think some people are very in bed with different manufacturer organisers and don't actually say so. They're not being sponsored by them, but they're really good friends with them. So, when I was an independent reviewer, let's imagine I was really good friends with CSI in Taiwan, and every time Alex sends me a product to review, if he's my mate or I'm going out for drinks with him, I'm not going to say it's crap, right? Unless he's got an honest relationship where I can say that. But some people, I think, are, because the airsoft community is very small, you can get very in bed with people very quickly, and it's very hard not to offend people, if that makes sense. Ben, you'll know this.
I've never got in bed with anybody. What are you insinuating?
Okay. Let's talk about accessibility of information and misinformation, because that's something that gets my goat. And it's very easy these days. And I it's one of those memes it's almost a meme on various forums, is use the search function, please. Because there's been 3,000 different not even what best GNU or what upgrades. So let's have a brief chat about how it used to be. How did we used to get information, and then how information is got now and how that's changed.
Well, firstly, the what best GNU thing actually that predates social media. That actually came from the original UCAN network forums and IRC chat, because it was common even back then when forums were a thing. It was the question that got asked 16 times a day in the school holidays, and that's where the whole meme thing came from. Obviously now it happens more because a social media group is more fluid and you don't have a constant record of that day's posts. So unless you actually search, then you're not going to see that someone asked that, 2 pages ago. And certainly with Facebook, they don't show you the most recent posts in a list anymore. They show you whatever they think is the one that you want to see, which is usually wrong. So
people ask that, what's the best gun? And I've always there's a lot of difference. We talked about it before. But really and truly, that 10 meters different extra range or anything like that rarely makes that much difference. The best gun is the one you're holding that works at the time that you need it to work. I've had some absolute nail-biting games in the past. I don't know if many people know, but Ian, the guy that runs Tactical Kit, did actually used to play Airsoft quite a lot. He's not just a baron of awesome tactical gear. He did actually used to run and play games quite a lot. And I once played, and I was terrified about playing Ian because Ian's on the other team and he knew the site really well and was running games. We played a night game at RF Upward at Urban Assault, and I managed to shoot him 3 times on the trot with my tri-shot Springer Spaz 12, the TM1. And that is a low-tech gun. That is not a monster of a gun or anything like that.
Scary. They were scary when they came out because they hurt.
Ben, at a Sterling game, I once shot someone with an electric blowback Marie pistol with an F, and he was so offended that I took him out of the game with a 30-pound EBB.
Exactly, man. So I would say my answer to that is, what is the best gun? Is the one that works, that you're using, that you're having fun with, because you can make anything work. Somebody's just posted in the comments on YouTube. I can just see it. I'm so outraged by it that I need to address this immediately. Do you think TM pistols are overrated? Yep. Absolutely not. They're not at all. They're brilliant.
When it comes to the FAMAS, we're getting a lot of people commenting, is FAMAS still the best gun?
No, it was shit from the start.
The reality of it is when we said that FAMAS was the best gun, it was trolling before trolling's time. FAMAS was never the best gun.
That's an very poor good to choose from.
No, man.
FAMAS gave it away.
sorry, a lot of people have said, what's the best gun? The thing I always say to people is, what do you think looks cool? Because I could tell you this gun is great. I could tell you this AK-74 by Ian Allen is the best gun I've ever owned, right? It's really realistic, great accuracy. If you don't like AKs, you'll have it for 3 games and sell it. The first gun you choose, or even the gun you choose, your 5th gun, should be one you want to be seen holding. Because that's it. It's all about whether you think it looks cool. Because Airsoft's about running around playing soldiers in the woods. You're trying to look like the person you want to be in the game, in the video, in the war film or whatever. There's no point carrying something that you think's horrendous just because it's effective.
I do my best.
I've always said to people, sorry, Tom.
I do my best Gary and Thumb impression here. I don't think people shoot enough, and I don't think people use the same gun enough, and I don't think they train. Training's a dirty word in Airsoft. People chop and change too much.
I don't think they use it stock enough either. Yeah. I think they change things before they need to. But I think the key thing that I've always said to people when people say, what's the best gun? I say, what model do you like, right? What do you like the look of? Take what you look of, then decide what system you want to use. You using gas, HPA, using AEG, using spring. Once you know that, then find a manufacturer that's within your price bracket at the highest spec you can to the price bracket that you have for that model and that system that you want to use. So if you want to use an M4, you want to use gas, you've got several options. You've got TM, you've got the cheaper JGs and AGMs and what have you. You've got GHK, you've got WE, smack bang in the middle. Then you could go and choose what is the best thing for your price band. So can you afford a GHK or a TM, or you've got to drop a little of it and go for a WE, or you've got to drop a lot and go for AGM and then spend a fortune.
I think, but that is a very long answer to a very short question.
Buy what you like.
No, but what I'm saying is, it's very easy to do little or no research. Pop on Facebook, for example, and ask a very short question without having checked. Now, in my old former experience, if you went and did that, you'd get told to go and fuck yourself, because go off and Google, go away, come back with a more sensible question. I've watched this film. I really like the gun they use in it. I don't actually know what it's called, but here's a picture. What's the best example for this much money that I have? To me is a sensible question. And I don't know if that's just I don't know if I'm overgeneralizing. I don't know if it's always been that way, or am I being really old and sensitive and thinking all these young people they just don't do it.
Tom, if I can add to that, I mean, I come from a wargaming background, and you get a lot of people going, "Oh, what should I buy? This, should I buy that?" And I always say the first thing you should buy is books. Right, and now we're in the sort of like current age. Obviously, you can find that stuff on YouTube and PDFs or whatever. But the point is, I try to say to people, you want to do British Airborne reenactment? There's a book called The Complete Airborne Soldier by this French company, blah, blah, blah. It's 40 quid. Oh, I don't want to spend 40 quid. No, buy that £40 book and read it, because it will save you buying a £50 pair of boots that are shit. Right? Because that guy would have told you the best reenactment companies to buy those boots from. He would have told you the best webbing to get. He would have told you all the mistakes he's made in 10 years of the hobby. So do a bit of research, and research is the key. Like Tom was saying, before you ask a question, look around, read a few websites, look at a few videos. There's millions of stuff out there. Just go for it.
Yeah. Or just ask somebody that seems to be doing the thing that you want to be doing.
Yeah. Exactly.
Ask somebody that seems to have a great time at Airsoft. Ask somebody that seems to be having a good day every time you see them. Why did you buy that? More often than not, be like, had a few of these in the past, had one of those in the past. I'm just really enjoying using this. You were saying earlier on, Gaz, like, what do you like the look of? Like, basically, there's 95% of choosing an Airsoft gun is in what does it look like? What kind of experience do you want from it? That last 5% is the performance. Because let's be honest, the performance difference between something that's stock and something that's souped up with as many upgrades as you want is so fractional. You're talking 50 feet a second or something like that, and that all bleeds off anyway. So, you measure in muzzle velocity straight away, you go 20 feet down and it all bleeds off, and a BB ends up travelling roughly the same speed before long. Buy some fucking decent BBs and you've upgraded your gun, basically. That is that part of the decision should be fractional. That should be just so that's tiny. That's not even a big part of what you're trying to decide. It's a small part. Get the thing that you like the look of. Dress up how you want to fucking dress. Get all your kit on. Spend a bit of money enjoying yourself. Don't worry so much about performance because, let's be honest, there's not that much difference between all of them. In fact, if you're using it right, you won't even fucking notice. All of the best players I know that have had the best reputation for being savage players that have been really successful, that have, ones to watch, don't give a shit about upgrading guns. I've had this classic Army M4 for 10 years, and I'm going back 10 years now. I've had this for 10 years. It's never skipped a beat. What have you done to it? Nothing.
It's more like the experience. If something works and gives you a good experience using it, then that's enough. Like, the thing that's most important to me is how the gun impresses itself upon me. So the first thing that a way a gun is going to impress itself is upon its looks.
Yeah.
I'm not going to use something that doesn't look the way I want it to look. So, like, I like my HK, so I like my MP5s, my G3s, that kind of thing. So that's something I'm going to go, right, that's a new gun. It's got what I want. It looks the way I want. Then, how does it make me feel when I shoot it? And that's one reason why I like my gas rifles, because they make me feel good when I shoot. Feel a recoil, you feel them alive. You have to control them to shoot them accurately.
We have a hell of a lot of light-hearted discussion and teasing about gas guns, and I'll put that to bed. I'm only doing it to tease you. I'm only doing it because it's a bit of a laugh. You know what? I'm sure they work absolutely fine, and I could probably use a gas gun day in, day out and not even notice any of the ins and outs. And it's because, like you say, that experience, that tactile performance that you get out of them, that actually means more to you than actually hitting somebody.
Yeah, but other people might have a different form of tactile experience that impresses on them. For me, it's the gas trigger and the recoil and the way the gun operates. For other people, it might be the snappiness of the trigger and the way the round zooms out. And a PTW I've used PTWs, I've got some myself, and the way that the round comes out is satisfying, but it feels dead. For other people, it might be their TM recoil, the way that behaves, and the way they get a nice flat trajectory with a .32 Ghost Tech fucking whatever round in it. I don't know. Whatever the experience is that impresses upon you after looks. Looks is first. Secondly is the other bit, that touchy-feely bit that you can't quite ever explain. You guys have done reviews, and I'm sure you've picked up a gun. I know Gaj, when he had the E&L first, I think there was he knew that there was something he really liked about it, but it's very hard to quantify what that is. That
it's such a beautiful replica, Gaz. I mean, I remember looking at it in the box, and it smelt like a real AK.
Yeah,
crazy because you have to oil an E&L or it rusts. They'd oiled it, and it smelt like a real gun.
Yeah,
sounds like a crazy tactile thing to be into, but I wanted an AK-74. It looked right. The furniture was spot on. It was all laminated wood as it should be, but it smelt like a gun, which is crazy to be honest. But
So we're actually kind of going back on the bit we were talking about reviewers a bit before, maybe kind of joining up a few of the points that we made. But sometimes a gun will get a good review without you even putting a BB through it. I'm sure it will shoot a BB if I try hard enough.
As long as you're clear about that's what you're saying.
Yeah,
that's absolutely fine.
That is what I wanted it to be. Like, I know for a fact, as soon as LCT make an SLR, I am going to buy one, and I'm going to be happy with it. And I'll probably end up dumping all of my modern kit, and I will just have that, and that will be the thing that I have.
Are you going to wear short shorts?
I've already got them on.
Sure.
Okay.
In fact, I've got a guy I know, my friend James, that lives over the road. I haven't seen him for a while now, but James is literally, as soon as it's available, he is going to buy one as well, and that will be his first airsoft gun, and that will be the loadout that he does. That's what he's interested in doing. And I'm like, just wait, don't bother spending money on an airsoft gun. Just wait until that's finally available, buy that, and then that will be airsoft wrapped up for you, because that's the loadout you want. That's the shit you want to collect.
Until the next one.
It doesn't really matter how.
Okay,
yeah.
So
the next one.
I want to slide into a slightly different topic, which you see on social media all the time, and I think it's partly created by that, which is and with Gaz we've already touched on it, which is seems to be the endless need to upgrade something you've just bought without any benchmark. So you've potentially not even fired the damn thing, and already it's gone. And actually, Glenn in the comments has said, "Guys I play with now tend to buy a gun and upgrade immediately. What happened to buying a gun and using it for a while before changing anything?" And it, yeah.
I think it's part of the individualism of Airsoft, in the fact that like everybody wants to go there wearing kit that makes them stand out. You want your M4 or your AK to be different and go, what's like? Oh, I've got this bit on it and that bit on it, and it's that cult of individuality which is really positive in Airsoft. It's great to see people exploring what they want out of things, but they don't want to have the same AR as the next guy. They want to go, this is my Evo, or this is my gas blowback WE, but I've got this bolt on it, and I've upgraded it to this. It's a bit show and tell, and you go, what have you done to your 249? Oh, well, I put a real stock on it, and I did this, and I put like this hot rubber in, and that's part of the Airsoft culture, I think, is to create your own project out of your gun. That's what I see anyway.
Also, it's spending money on something you enjoy doing. I don't think we should ever vilify people just for spending some money on something they like.
Absolutely.
Like, since we've been in lockdown, well, it's not even been in lockdown. Since we've been on furlough, I've suddenly decided that I quite like running quite a lot. And I've ended up buying 2 different pairs of running shoes and a fucking hydration rig and all kinds of different bits and pieces, like these headphone things I bought for running. And I can't help it. I just buy kit. No matter what hobby I'm into, I just buy kit because I like buying kit. I like to indulge in something that I enjoy spending time doing. And am I so wrong for wanting to do that?
Well, and also there's the fact that we can't do our hobby all the time. It's not a Monday to Friday hobby for most people, right? So the teching side, the kit side, the buying and trading and hunting down that elusive piece of kit is something that can happen on the mundane days when you should be concentrating on work.
Where's Jez when you're saying that, actually?
Jez is actually watching.
You get it in classes, don't you? Like in wargaming, I know I've seen people who've had their Chaos Space Marine army, and they've done it and painted it lovely, and you open the hatches on the armoured personnel carriers, and they've got flashing lights and a demonette doing a pole dance in there. Now, that's not necessary to play a game of Warhammer. But it's so cool, right? And it's made their army individual, and everyone comes around the table and goes, hey, look at this guy, he's got a lap dancer in the back of a tank. You know,
I want to go and model that now. might get me going Games Workshop again. It's been so. I think teching wise is teching is much more accessible. It used to be, you used to have a stage by stage on a forum with really bad pictures on a potato camera, and now it's like you can actually see stuff in high definition.
YouTube guides have made a We used to have a website called mechbox.com. I don't know if you guys ever remember it.
No.
It was the only online resource for finding exploded diagrams and some kind of instruction into opening gearboxes. And it was only available for taking Maru products because they were the only AEGs at the time. But it was invaluable in the early years of finding out how your AEG worked and how to maybe repair something with no spare parts. Obviously, that's disappeared over the years, and models have expanded out with lots of different manufacturers. And now we have YouTube, and YouTube is very useful. I've used YouTube at work. I've been doing something, I've gone, fucking hell, I haven't seen one of these in so long, I can't remember, because I don't touch AEGs very often now. I'm lost. Oh, quickly Google it. There's a video on YouTube that shows me exactly how that needs to be. Right, there I go. That's that screw I couldn't find. There was HK417, VFC HK417 a couple of years ago. I hadn't taken one apart before, and I went, I can't get this gearbox out, and it's because there's a hidden screw that isn't on any instructional manual or anything.
Well, there are no instruction manuals, but
technical. So even though I had access to
databases,
it wasn't there. But I found it on a YouTube video because another user had done one beforehand. So that kind of thing is very useful indeed.
I think it definitely does lead to people wanting to do their own stuff. I had a live stream with English Kiwi, which you can see on his channel. He's now broken it down to slightly more accessible bits. Waffled for 2 hours about teching, and neither of us are particularly high-end techs, but we just talk about the basics and getting into it. And I'm also aware of the irony of us talking about social media on social media.
On social media.
just yes, Ben. Just we'll waffle for a bit. Just go for it. Your camera's mirrored though. Live streaming's amazing. I might cut that bit out, the persistent bit. No, so I think it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because it's brilliant that there's so much material out there, but then also it sort of drives the people wanting to do stuff to their guns in the first place, or have stuff done to their guns in the first place.
I think the important bit we talked to us before is people don't use the gun before teching it. Like, it's just try it.
Exactly.
If it doesn't work, fix it.
Well, how do you know if you've made it better?
Yeah, because don't get me wrong, there's a lot of comments I'm seeing on YouTube right now about people saying about teching things, but we're not saying don't upgrade at all, because I've upgraded hot rubbers, I've upgraded this and the other. What we're saying is use a gun and put a good few hundred rounds through it, so you know what those expensive changes are doing to what you're doing.
It goes back to our comments about reviewers. If they've not put several thousand BBs through the gun, it's almost certain the gun is not performing the way it should be anyway.
And here, Gaj, here's the difference between an AEG user and a gas. He says, I say hundreds, he says thousands.
But doing an AEG, if I didn't put at least 2 bottles of BBs through it on a weekend, and that's what I do, at least 2. If it was an LMG, maybe like 3, because you need to hold down the trigger for ages. Is that motor going to burn out? Is it going to fuse?
Your hot rubber doesn't actually bed in and make a nice contact patch for at least 300 rounds.
Yeah.
So why upgrade a hot rubber because the hot rubber's crap when you're going to have to do the same with the replacement hot rubber, and most of the effect that you changed with that new hot rubber was placebo. You think it's better, but in actual fact, just using the stock one sometimes makes it as good as the replacement. And don't get me wrong, Maple Leaf hot rubbers are great, Prometheus hot rubbers are great, and if you are having problems with your hot, put one in for sure. It does make it.
There is some legitimate stuff, like some brands come in with hot rubbers that are just too hard for UK power levels. That's just a thing. Now, that's also
GMP.
It's the GMP, KWA the same. Most KWA hot rubbers come in too hard. Now, it's a bit shit that they don't change them at the factory, but I can understand through volume and minimum order quantities and all of that kind of stuff. But then also maybe the suppliers should be they should be doing it at their end, because effectively you're selling a product which is not suitable for the market you're selling it into. But
I'll tell you a secret there.
Go for it.
The reason why a lot of these items. So KWA is a good example. There is no full-on distribution into the UK for KWA factory products. So PTS stuff, there's people, but KWA, JTAC does quite a bit of it, but generally KWA doesn't actually have an official UK distributor, and they haven't for many, many years. So they won't make guns for the UK market because there isn't a UK market. So if you buy a gun over here that's KWA, it's come for another market, probably Asia or America, where their target market wants 400 FPS. So yes, the retailer could do it, but in truth is, if you buy a KWA product as a retailer from a non-distributor, non-local distributor, the chances are you've actually only got 20 quid on that rifle.
Yeah.
So if you change the hot rubber, that's 5 quid plus labour.
That's your margin gone.
Gone. Why sell a gun? All right, when bother doing KWA then? So now players have just lost another option because they wanted it to be this. They wanted it to be 330 FPS as close on the dot. They wanted to have a new hot rubber from the box, and therefore what they've actually done, instead of getting what they wanted, is they've removed another option from the market for the UK, because the retailers will go, we're not doing that for 5 quid. Do you know what I mean? It's not worth it. We just won't sell them. So you've got to be careful with saying we'd like everything for as little as possible, because you won't get it.
I think people also need to understand the size, and which is beyond the scope of this conversation, about the size of the airsoft market worldwide, and certainly the size of the airsoft market in the UK. We're just not going to get stuff perfect, and also people aren't prepared to pay the money either.
Yeah.
We're a hobby industry. Hobby industries are not massive, margin industries. It just isn't there, and I know this from first hand, and people will be surprised how little amount of margin there is on guns.
It's absolutely scary, isn't it, Gaz? I remember when I first started working in the airsoft industry, I saw the profit margin on really top end things, and you see people making 4 or 5% on a unit, and you're going how do you make a living selling that? You literally
if you have a faulty one, it comes back once and that's it.
Yeah.
Well, you sell upgrades and accessories, Gadge. That's how you make a living.
Exactly. Consumables.
It's how bike shops exist, doing servicing and spares and repairs. That's how they exist. That's their day-to-day bread.
It's worth letting players know that when you buy a gun that's maybe £250, it might have cost the shop £210, and that sounds crazy. And it's like they're making it, but that's how it is. Yeah.
Okay, so let's wind it back a bit. So I think people just need to be aware. I think, but again, that's about context, isn't it? That's about the person on the other end of social media just being honest about what about the advice that they're giving and what it is. If you go on the KWA forum, the first thing they'll tell you is change the hot rubber. So maybe just doing a bit of research before you make that purchase is fine. Okay, so I think we've kind of bashed on social media to death. We could probably, so before we turn into a bunch of ranty men.
Should we bash on Ben for a minute? Because
sorry, guys.
He goes on about all being old men, and yet he was the one that had a weak bladder.
I've also had 6 pints.
I just pissed.
No, I haven't really.
I'm running out.
Problems.
I'm running out. I might have to get an emergency beer.
I broke the seal before we started going, to be fair. That was the problem.
Might have to send a message to the beer fairy. Okay,
so a guy. Sorry, Tom. A guy has just. This might actually segue into the barriers to entry and expectations in airsoft.
Oh.
What's your opinion on using paintball masks in airsofts? I could see more people modifying. I could see people modifying helmets a bit to fit those masks.
That's what people want to use.
Wow.
I want to see used, but
it's a big one for me, because one of the biggest appeals of airsoft originally was you don't have to wear one of those fucking great masks. I really like the fact that you could just get away with shooting glasses and maybe a shamag or something like that.
But that was back when all Tokyo Maruas were on the market, and it was 275 FPS you were being hit by at a normal 15 rounds per second maximum.
For me, it wasn't necessarily. It was.
Ben came in a bit later than us. Yeah.
More of a sportsmanship player base. It wasn't about fucking people's teeth up.
True.
I've got terrible teeth and I've got bits smashed out of them. Neither of mine are real. But that was none of them have been lost through airsoft. I've been hit in the teeth a couple of times and I've been lucky enough to get away with it. But I've never been that precious about it. I was like, if it happens, it happens. You know, I'll probably go out for a pint later that night and upset some big hard bastard and he'll chin me and I'll deal with the consequences of it afterwards. But it never really even factored into my original scope of airsoft. It was like, oh, I best wear a lower face mask. I wasn't really all that bothered. Like, I've always thought, like, if you've got your gun in the right place, you're kind of covering the bit of your face anyway. So stop just grinning and swinging your gun around and you'll be fine. But if people want to use them, people will use them. If this is the way things are going to go, if it stops people from getting hurt and stops people from getting further restricted, whatever.
See, I think there's a balance here, because in my ideal world, we'd be back to wearing glasses all the time. And like you said, there'd be lower numbers and people would be a little bit more respectful and sportsmanship about things, and you wouldn't get twatted in the face all the time. However, that's not our reality.
No.
We've had that ruined. But on the flip side is now it's more acceptable to wear a mesh lower face mask, because police are wearing them on firearms jobs.
Yeah.
SF are wearing them on firearms jobs.
Yeah.
So you've got an option for lower face masks. But from a human point of view, is if something works and will protect someone and give them the confidence to be able to play airsoft, I don't have an issue with them wearing something that makes it safe for them.
Possibly be contentious here, but
Please.
if it gives you the confidence to just not give a shit and just to go rampage.
Yeah,
this is the thing that pisses me off most about airsoft, is it's supposed to fucking hurt. It's not supposed to be. It's so gentlemanly that it doesn't hurt. Basically, there is actually a threshold of pain involved in airsoft where it should hurt a bit. And if you're not willing to accept that it should hurt a bit, I don't like the extra confidence that it seems to give people just to be this raging berserker and completely break their the illusion of what I've forgotten the word. What is it? Suspension of disbelief.
Yeah. Well, you wouldn't get into boxing and not want to get hit, would you?
No.
You know.
There's also the other thing that would prevent me from encouraging like face masks like that is certain themed events and things.
Yeah.
I wouldn't.
I add on to that, Gaz. I mean, like, for me, I think that they're great and they let younger players, or you can take your miss as long as not before. That's a bit sexist to know. But like, anyone's scared of being hit, it gives them that security. But for the realism of airsoft, we talked about this before about the idea of airsoft defined in law being like military or law enforcement events. for me, people with big face masks on, especially like a Vietnam game or a World War II game, ruins that illusion. Now, you can still have protection on your face and be sort of like one guy in a World War II game, he got an anatomical face mask, they do, and he painted it flesh coloured and painted stubble on it with like War Games paint. And from 10 foot away, he looked like a normal person. So his face was protected, complete face cover, didn't ruin the game illusion. I've got a tactical scarf snood thing with a metal plate sewn into it that goes over my teeth.
Yeah.
So I can look like an operator and not lose my teeth.
Yeah, you can have a snood with mesh inside it.
That's what I've got, one of those, yeah.
I mean, what with current events and shit like that, maybe wearing masks is going to be reality from now on.
Yeah,
a bit topical, I know.
95 filter in a dye mask.
I don't know if you can offer any insight into it, but maybe for the good of the viewers, do you know why police and firearms and special counter-terrorist units are wearing mesh masks?
Originally, it was because simunition really fucks you up. But ultimately, it's also really, really good for keeping your mug off the newspaper.
Is it basically a breathable parsec kind of?
Yeah, exactly. But primarily, originally, it was that they did have issues at first with UTM ammunition, with people perhaps not taking it as seriously as they could do, and accidents resulted. And therefore, they were used as UTM shields. But I know some groups, they've become almost a fashion around it as well. Like people were finding the latest type airsoft. When we had the shop, and I was at the shop, we had people coming in and looking for mesh masks of a certain design because they were Guccier than the normal ones that they were using for training. So
you issue something, somebody will try and buy something cooler.
Exactly what happened. That's the best way of putting it. Yeah.
You could issue a stick-on Velcro dick for your head, and somebody would try and buy a cooler stick-on Velcro dick.
It's a good idea for the armed forces to use them. So even with a traditional blank-firing gun back in the day when I was a reservist, and you have a safety distance because it might be blank, but it's still chucking out bits of metal fragments, projectiles, gas, etc. So having your face covered, I can see why the armed forces do it. Even with normal blank, it'd be useful because otherwise you can't engage that 30 meters or less.
Yeah, and there's also fragmentation from using things like flashbangs in a room. A lot of shit I think this is something that airsofters probably don't appreciate with the grenades that we have, is we have like flashbangs and thunder flash and whatever, but they don't do anything. Like there's no devastating effect to airsoft flashbangs. A proper flashbang devastates a room. Like there's crap going everywhere, and it's quite a horrible place to be. And the secondary charges that come off some military flash are actually little slugs of metal, the secondary charges, and they cause you quite a bit of damage. So yeah.
And they can singe your alley operator beard as well, can't they? They can do serious damage to your alley operator beard. So the more you can protect that.
I've still got. Sorry, do you want to answer the question about the Glocks from James C? So what's the best Glock 19 for a UKSF impression?
Doesn't matter. Whichever one you want to use. Umarex is the best, yes, but I use a TM one as well as an Umarex one. I've got one of each. Because sometimes if we're doing things in the middle of winter, the Umarex one, I don't like using CO2, so I'll just switch to the TM one for ease because of the slide. Okay,
so let's move on to this topic, which we've kind of just started, which is barriers to entry in airsoft, or the lack of thereof. So let's do a bit of historical stuff. We kind of already talked about it. Certainly, when I started, buying your first GNU was 300 quid with a Tokyo Marui replica, and these days it's changed a lot. So what do we think about the actual barriers to entry, or the change of barriers to entry in airsoft, and how that's affected the game?
Sorry, Gaj. I'll jump in straight away because I've got a fairly succinct thing to say. I think the barriers are lower. The cost is lower. It's way easier to find something to get into, but the expectations are far higher.
Yeah.
Discuss.
I mean, like, I'll agree with Tom. When Tom and I started and founded LFO in like the early 2000s, but getting into airsoft, you could get surplus kit quite cheap. You could get like Flecton or DPM combats for 20 quid, boots for a tenner. But it's only really Classic Army and Tokyo Marui getting guns into the UK market. And you're looking at £350 for a new Tokyo Marui. So getting involved in airsoft was a £400 to £500 trick. So essentially, you got told about it by someone you knew. You went and hired a few guns. You tried it out. You liked it. Then you had to go, do I want to commit? And if you committed, you were in for a long time because you had to get that investment to pay off. And I think now you can be in for 150 quid. And if you don't like it, you can just tit about or just sell it and move on. And that's why we see people joining the hobby and then leaving the hobby within 6 months.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Also, I mean, Tokyo Marui guns were between £300 and £400 for an AEG back then. They're still the same now, pretty much, and most high mid-range are. So even if we look at the same, but money wasn't worth the same. So £300 to £400 back in the 90s was a lot more money because you only earned £200 a week than it is now. Also, Tokyo Marui AEGs came with a 60-round magazine and a loading tool, like a RAM loading tool, I think it was. Hang on, just a second.
Did it come with jumpers for goalposts as well?
No, we used to use webbing for
goalposts. Oh, look at that thing.
It's what you've got with your Tokyo Marui AEG.
Look at that speed loader, not speed loader.
And it's to mark them to say how many rounds, where your magazine that you were using that loading rod came to. So you had to buy a high cap. Now, a high cap was 40 quid. It wasn't 15 quid or 10 quid. It was 40 quid for a Tokyo Marui high cap. If you could find one.
When you got it, it worked.
Yeah. And then your battery was a Nikad Tamiya that you bought from a model shop. It was 20 quid.
Mm-hmm. And lasted for 40 minutes.
And there was no upgrading culture at all then.
There was, I don't know. Certainly when I got in, there was lots.
That's why.
there was lots of throwing away the internals and putting Sistema Fortune kits in, but that's there was certainly less available. Yeah. So now I just bought a gun for £89 from Patrol Base. I got one of the Specman cores in order to do like a 0 to Hero series on it. But 90 quid for a reasonably good looking replica, it just blows my mind. Really, it's just like what.
I've paid more than that. I've paid more than that for it in a barrel.
Can I there, guys? I think when it changed around 2005. There was a massive China soft movement where you could get guns for absolute pennies. So I remember me and my friend Evo, we got 5 or 6 guns for probably £40, £50 a piece.
Yeah. G36s from JG, which are still superb now. JGG3s, SIG 552s.
Well, these are all Marui clones, so we're looking at Cyma Thompsons, Cyma AKs, and I own the original Marui AK and the Cyma one, and there wasn't that much difference. They'd done a really good job on it. The difference was the Marui was 350 quid, the Cyma was 50 quid.
There was another difference as well. The Cyma came with a 600-round high cap, and the Cyma came with steel gears. The TM still has zinc alloy.
Right.
Tangentially, has anybody had a go on one of the new TM recoil AKs? Because I've got to admit, I haven't touched one yet.
No.
Since they upgraded it.
They are not compatible with real bits, so that straight away done.
No. But they've got the bolt stop and the recoil, and, well, it doesn't lock back, but it stops.
I'll get a GHK.
It stops running when the magazine's dead.
The TM one.
Get a GHK. If you want that stuff, get a GHK, and then you can put real bits on it.
Which that one does.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mine gas blowback.
But so
it's a weird one. It's a very weird one for me. For me, it's it's actually a bit of a first in the airsoft. My fancy camera's died.
We put it with like a face palm, man.
That was amazing.
It was terrible. Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
You might have to blank me out for a couple of minutes, Tom, whilst I fix my camera setup.
I'll just
carry on talking.
If I do that, and it doesn't really matter, just carry on, Ben. It doesn't matter.
I'll see if it's stuck back up.
I can probably turn your brightness all the way down. Hang on.
Lied about that, so
that was quality. Good timing as well.
The back of my computer's got very hot, and it's unstuck the tripod system that I had on there. It's melted it.
So Ben, what were you trying to say before your camera fell off? Can you remember?
No, I was saying it's actually a bit of a weird one. I'm usually really, really hot on TM stuff, and have been, but the AK stuff is the first kind of foray into TM recoils that I've really just not been all that interested in.
That new one.
The new one's an absolute abomination.
Hey, Storm, whatever, it's just horrendous, whatever they've done.
I'll be honest, between the KWA recoils and the TM recoils, I had multiples of both over the time. I've kept more KWA ones and got rid of all but one TM one because the KWA is just better.
If I was doing what I did, I mean, I bought mine for a good reason. Mainly, I wanted with good reason. And in my last TM video, I do say, unless you're really fussed about really accurate trades and getting it bang on, buy a KWA.
Yeah, the recoil is stronger. They're built stronger. They're cheaper. You can use any magazine in it as long as you don't mind losing the bolt stop feature. But if you do want the bolt stop feature, you just put a normal ERG mag in it.
So
the only bit that I was going with the TMM4 was the bit that still kept it in the lead for me was the fact that the magazines are practically real sized. They're not shorter. That was the one thing that was clinging in there for me.
Going back to accessibility, though, of Airsoft, and we got sidetracked a bit by Maruis, I think, but most of those cheaper Airsoft guns that came in and like broke that mould of you have to pay £350 were direct clones of Marui products. So we've done Marui to death, but then I think it opened the doors for people to say, actually, you don't need to put a product on the market with a buyer price of £350, 150, 200, 250 are acceptable. And we just saw the floodgates open then. You saw everything from absolute crap that you see on a fairground stall for 30 quid, which is technically an AEG, even if it runs off AA batteries or whatever, through to incredibly good guns that you should be paying 450 quid for, but are actually 200 quid.
And I don't think people realise that the biggest change wasn't just AEGs, it was also gas pistols. Gas pistols, prior to that moment, you had really Western Arms and Tokyo Marui and Tanaka. They were all plastic and they were all over £200 at the time. Tokyo Marui just started making some gas blowout pistols that were any good. But to be fair, Tokyo Marui gas pistols didn't start good.
First one I had was terrible.
Yeah, and then we saw all pistols tend to go around the £100 or less mark. And only now we're starting to see them creep back up towards the £200 mark through severe licensing and some really realistic build quality and trades and materials and all.
Talking about Umrex locks again, aren't you?
Yeah.
It's the GHK one I'm waiting
for. A second.
The GHK
I'm resolving my technical issues.
Would look at that. At the moment, we're waiting for GHK to give news on that GHK Glock, which is the first gas blowback pistol, which is basically running on a rifle system, running on a rifle nozzle. They've machined the slide out of billet steel.
Oh, it's forged
to accept the nozzle.
It's amazing. Forged then machined.
And the slide rails in the frame are moulded into the plastic frame, and they're steel slide rails. That's going to be an approximation of £350 to £400. Now, people say, "Oh, that's expensive." You can't buy a steel pistol for that much right now. There is no steel slide pistol. You buy an aftermarket steel slide at 300 quid.
When you say it's expensive, what really annoys me, right, is like I like several hobbies, and they're all luxuries hobbies. So I do wargaming, I collect kits, I do airsoft. And people go, "Oh, you spent £300 on that? That's really expensive." And then they will go to the Dog and Hammer pub and spend £50 on shit beer, right, and then puke it up, and tell me that I'm wasting money. Do you know what? All hobbies are a luxury. You pay what you want. And there's nothing wrong with paying £50 for a gas pistol, like a WE1 second hand, like my Makarov, or paying 150 quid if it makes you happy. You spend what you can with the budget you have. And it's not elitism. It's just a case of like, do you know what? I've got £300 to spend on a rifle. I will.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, I've given up a lot of things that I used to do that took up money. And now all I really do have is I spend a bit of money. And I don't spend much these days on Airsoft either. And Airsoft has worked as a revenue stream for me for years too. So I tend to make Airsoft pay for Airsoft. But everyone's entitled to spend what they like on their hobbies. That's the other thing. There's a lot of shaming at the moment with people, shaming people spending their hard-earned money on whatever they want. Well, go ahead.
So I used to skydive, right? And I don't do it anymore because I got scared. I spent 10 years doing it, did like 700 jumps, competed for Britain at the Europeans, won medals and all that sort of shizwaz. My skydiving rig, so the rucksack, let's call it, £3,000. Every time I got in a plane, it was 20 quid. And if you're training, you can easily do 10 jumps a day.
Yeah.
So Airsoft to me has never been an expensive hobby. It's always just it's just like.
Did you give up skydiving when you realised that you actually had more time in the aircraft than the pilot did?
It's just mental. No, I gave up legitimately because I got scared. So I did the Europeans in 2007, and on the last jump on the way down, I was just like, I don't want to be here anymore.
Yeah, well, there must be a fatality percentage that you avoided.
It's fairly safe. It was more about what I realised is I enjoy competition, and I enjoy stretching myself, and I enjoy doing stuff like that. It's partly why I like Airsoft, but the way I like doing.
And you enjoy the adrenaline.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you're going to die every time you jump out.
Yeah, well, fundamentally, you're going to die every time you leave an aircraft. So looking at it, but that's 20 quid every time you jump out of an aircraft, right? That's pretty much a game. That's pretty much a game fee. You're just throwing money away. And people that do motor racing or cars or high end or sort of road cycling, Airsoft money is nothing.
Yeah, it is. And Airsoft, I don't think people understand. Most hobbies have actually increased in costs over the last 20 years. Airsoft not. Airsoft has actually reduced in cost over the last 25 years.
Yeah.
Another one that I'm back in now is skateboarding. And I was having a discussion with someone the other month that it's really weird that a deck that I would buy in 1990 is the same price now as what it was then.
So what's a good-level skateboard cost now, guys?
Well, a deck is about 50 quid.
Yeah,
right?
I bought a really good skateboard for about 130, 140 quid in the early 2000s.
And it's still that now.
Yeah?
They haven't gone up in price. So there's been no inflation on that. The same way there's been no inflation on Airsoft.
But that's site fees, right? So site fees haven't changed.
No,
in 20, 30 years. That's I find that absolutely mental.
I was thinking about this the other day. I remember when my dad bought me FIFA 96 for the Sega Mega Drive, and it was 45 quid.
Yeah.
Computer games are still 45 quid now, but they've actually stealthed computer games though. So you pay your 45 quid and you get your base pack.
Yeah.
And they've actually gone up in price. Is there anything like stealthy on Airsoft?
No, there's no microtransactions, man.
It's actually BBs.
Well, there is.
Why have I been sending you that £3 a week then, guys?
Pictures I send you.
Sorry, yeah.
These haven't really changed, and I think this can lead into something else. We're in this lockdown, and we're going to see a quite bad economic downturn after this, and we're going to see a lot of businesses struggle in all industries, and we're going to see a lot of people struggle in all countries, regardless. But watch Airsoft grow. And it's happened every single time we've had an economic recession.
Hobbies are recession-proof. No, my friend works for Games Workshop. They do really well when we have a recession because, do you know what? You need to feel good about yourself. You need to do something while you can't do anything else. So you buy your £20 worth of upgrades, or you buy your paint, or your models, whatever.
I've been doing that for the last 6 weeks.
Yeah, you're not. You spend on hobbies because you're not saving for a new house or a big holiday or a new car because you can't afford those because the banks aren't lending. So you spend on your small things.
Yeah.
And we've seen it every time. So people don't understand that.
Or you buy a 3D printer.
Yeah.
No, the one of the things I think, that this people our age, a lot of the younger viewers might not remember it. But I remember this kind of vibe being around after 9/11.
Yeah.
And everybody was terrified for the first couple of weeks. And then after a few days, after a little bit of time had passed, people were like, you know what, fuck it, we could all be dead next week. Why not let's just enjoy what we can enjoy when we can enjoy it.
It's actually
there's gonna be mayhem when we're back in action. Especially when it comes to pubs and bars and things like that, and airsoft sites. People are gonna be like, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna spend the last 40 quid I've got, and it's gonna go crazy. But I think there will be, and I remember just after 9/11, there was a real feeling of jubilation and like community in everything throughout society.
Yeah.
And that kind of like will hopefully roll into airsoft, and people will stop being twats, and people will be like, you know what, like we couldn't do this for months, so we finally can do it. So let's just enjoy it while we're here. It's not here to have a fight. We're here to have a good fucking time. So let's just have a good time whilst we're here. I don't really care if you didn't take your hit or not. You probably, give you the benefit of the doubt. So maybe that will roll out. Maybe.
Actually, there's a guy that used to play with us. He hasn't been around us for a long time, but I remember someone was getting really frustrated on a game day once at Airsoft because people were just not. It was taking like a few rounds, not so much. And as a gas user, that's really annoying because it's half a magazine. But people were getting frustrated, and the guy that was playing alongside us went, "Don't, because it's realistic." And I went, "What do you mean? If you shoot someone with a bullet, they die." He went, "Not first time every time." He said, "Just treat it as part of the realism of that round over penetrated and didn't take him down. So I need to put another one into him. I need to put someone a bit in a more fleshy or bony area."
And so he's mad angry now.
It's a good video in itself, Gaz, but that expectations of Airsoft and how you treat things that are going wrong or badly in the game is a video in itself. Probably.
Yeah, we'll do that. That'd be a good one to do.
Yeah.
Really nice. Really good one
just
to do.
what you were saying, I remember Tom and I were playing ages ago at a very paintball-y Airsoft site, but it was good. And one lad was frustrated because he was a new player and he wasn't hitting the targets. He was going, "Oh, what do I do?" And I just said to him, "It's a big field. Wander off 50 metres down that way and shoot someone else.
Yeah.
Don't get angry about it. If the expectations you've got aren't happening here, if there's 60 people each side, it's a huge game, go and shoot someone else. Because that guy isn't your opponent. He's not the person you're here to play with."
Yeah, I've avoided actually having contact with people at sites before now because I know it's just a waste of rounds. So if I see them, I ignore them.
Well, Tom and I used to play at a site ages ago, the first one, and there was one guy who was notorious for not taking his hits. Not that he didn't take his hits, he never said hit or raised his hand. He'd just get hit and then walk off. So you never knew if this guy was out. Let's call him Jimmy, yeah? So is Jimmy in the game, is Jimmy not? And because Jimmy was really in with the Marshals, they never really told him off over it. And it was fucking frustrating. So if ever I saw him on site, I'd just scoot over 50 metres down the other way and shoot. I knew would actually upset the head.
Can you remember the fella that we played at Urban Assault a couple of times that was similar? And he wasn't malicious by it at all. Yeah. He wasn't in any way malicious. It was just difficult for him because he was really wrapped up in it, and you could tell he fucking loved it. I mean, let's be honest, this guy was probably double our age, and it was actually probably really, really strenuous for him.
Is that rucksack?
But then, sorry?
Is that the guy with the big rucksack?
Yeah. Great guy. And lots of people complained about him over time, but you realise you just got to be like, dude, that guy is like double your age, probably triple, quadruple your age for some guys, and he's loving it. So just suck it up, mate, and let him get on with it.
Oblivious. And some people just seem to have no physical reaction to anything either. Like there was one guy I remember playing with once, and he was a regular at a site that I worked at as well. And he was an older guy, but not that old, but he was a big lad. And he had big hair and big beard, and he was quite big. And it was when the WE M16s first came out, and I had an M16A3, WE M16A3 on the old AWSS system. And I saw him from a bit of a distance away, and I put a shot across and hit him in the arm, and there was no reaction, like none at all. And he still hadn't seen me, so I thought, right, okay, I'll put one into his wrist because that's out in front of him. And I put one into his wrist, and he still hadn't. So I moved a few meters closer, thinking maybe I'm just at the maximum range of this rifle. I've down-tuned it quite a long way to make it usable. So I put one into his side again as I sort of got closer, and he still didn't react. So I thought, right, okay, I'll put one in the fleshy bit, and went for his neck, and his hair caught it. But this time I've used like a quarter of my magazine. So, and I was like, I don't want to, because he's a nice bloke, but he's not even flinched. He's not looked my direction. I'm using a rifle that goes bang. and he still is not aware of me. In the end, I shot on the end of the nose.
8 years, we should all have hair metal haircuts to be better players.
Yeah. Well, I swear, if he got home, he probably used to comb out BBs like this. Yeah, he was
probably making BBs. He profited in BBs every day.
Well, I think that sort of segues into what we have been talking about, which is almost barriers to entry. But for a lot of people, taking hits, I think a lot of people get really far too overexcited about cheating and all this nonsense. Fine, I'm sure there are some cheaters. There's just a lot of people that do not have particularly good awareness, or they're wearing too much kit, or their hearing's not great, or they just got too excited. Sorry, Gaz?
People overestimate their abilities or their gun's abilities too.
Massively.
Yeah. The amount of times people have fallen short and they say, I'm hitting them, and you're like, not unless you're firing a supersonic power level.
If you've ever done any marshalling or running of games, you will realise 99% of people moaning about cheaters, one, are probably cheating themselves. It's always the loudmouths. And two, the BBs haven't got anywhere near them.
The people who usually, you're right about the people who usually cry about cheaters are paranoid about other people cheating because they know they're doing it.
Yeah. Mm. I remember when I used to do a lot of marshalling.
I've got to be honest, I've seen in my time playing Airsoft, I can probably count on one hand the amount of times I've seen actual bona fide verified cheating. Yeah. And I've been able to say, without a doubt, that guy is cheating.
Stand out.
People are so hyped up they don't know they're being hit.
Yeah. There's a guy on YouTube now saying people think they're John Wick, and I'm really sorry, mate, but I'm totally disagreeing with you there. People don't think they're John Wick. It's just not the reality of the situation that you're in.
Here is that social media expectation thing. I think that more people expect there to be cheating in the UK on sites than there really is. As well as the problems we've already discussed with people's ability not being as good as they think it is, or people not realising or wearing too much kit. A lot of people expecting there to be cheaters because they see YouTube videos from the US where they do have a major cheating problem on a lot of sites there, or because there are selected clips shown from a YouTuber who's trying to condense something and use a bit of clickbait to get some views. So he shows all this cheating stuff, when in actual fact, cheating in Airsoft in the UK is such a minuscule issue that you very rarely see genuine cheating.
Gaz, I think
Sorry, Gaz, go on.
I think you're right. I think cheating is like a spike in the demographic. So there might only be one guy who cheats on a site, but he's fucking terrible and he's really cheaty. He's up there, yeah? And the thing is, because there are so many Airsoft sites now, all competing for that market, like I know in my area there are 2 sites within like a kilometre of each other, right? And if Dave and his mates come along and Dave is a really bad cheat, that site isn't going to ban Dave, because banning Dave takes away his £30 green fee and his 3 mates he takes, and they'll go next door. Now, when me and Tom started playing, and they say this is going back to how Airsoft was to how it is now, there was one site for 150 miles or whatever, and it was a small community, and if you're a dick and you cheated, they'd go, do you know what, you're banned and you're off, and you really were banned. And there's a amount of sites I've seen now go, cheating won't be tolerated. If you're cheating, you're banned, and they don't. Now, I like sites that are realistic and say you've got 3 strikes, going to give you the benefit of doubt. You might not have felt it might be a problem, but I think the thing is now Airsoft is so big that anybody who is a bad player, A, like I say, for an economical reason, isn't going to get chucked off by the site, and B, has the option to go. I mean, I could, in the Midlands where I live, I could go to a different site every month or every week for like 2 months and get banned from every site. Yeah. And if those retailers or those site managers got together and said, hey, that gadget's a wanker, ban him, right, yeah? I could ruin people's day 8 times in a row without even having to repeat myself.
And I think a lot of the reason behind that is because we've got more sites and we're a bigger community now, A, we've become a bit more fractured in that it would just become too big and people don't talk because of that. But also, because of the proximity of sites getting closer and closer, they're in competition with each other. Exactly. It also means they go, well, if you get banned from Site A in the same city as Site B will be really happy to have you because it fucks over Site A for another person or 3 people, like you said. Yeah. Whereas it used to be, even when sites were run by just players, they all went on UCAN, and it was after a couple of reports of so-and-so team or so-and-so group or so-and-so person go into a site, it got around the community, and you weren't just having difficulty getting to a site, you had no hobby.
Yeah, they say name and shame, but people don't name and shame. Literally, I've never seen anybody post up a list of bad players.
You really,
I have.
you really couldn't do it anymore. You'd get in serious problems.
Can we touch on a subject there? There's a lot of people talking about trusting marshals, sticking with your marshals, trusting their decisions. I've run a few games and had to make a few difficult decisions that have pissed off a few people, actually. I've been screamed at by people, been called names, and I've had to make a decision to disadvantage a certain team simply to keep the game in action, to keep the game going. Because if you let people force, if one team's so far on the back foot that it's no longer fun for them, they're going to start cheating, and then it's going to get bad. And then likewise, if you let one team run rampant, they're probably going to get a bit overconfident, and they'll probably start cheating, and it's going to be a bit sucky. So I've had to make decisions to balance a game out that has strongly disadvantaged one team, and you're a dickhead, you've ruined our whole morning. No, you've had your morning. Your morning was cool. You had a great time this morning. You had 3 hours of amazing play. Now can you just take it on the chin and let the other team probably have a little bit of fun? Take your win away with you and enjoy that, but also accept the fact that the other guys are going to have some fun as well. Just because the way the wind's blowing or something like that has left them at a huge disadvantage, let them play it out. Let them just have some fun.
I've always
So, sorry, Tom. It kind of just joins into what I was saying about the old fella we used to play against at Urban Assault when we went there. You know what? He wasn't even looking in your direction. So if he's not even shooting anywhere near you, so if he doesn't take the hit that you are insistent that hit him, doesn't really matter because he's fucking off somewhere else. He's not even involved in your bit of the game. So you can go ahead and carry on doing what you're doing. So don't take it so personally. He probably just doesn't know, mate. He's not trying to ruin your day. He just doesn't know. He's oblivious to what's going on. There's some grass in the way or something like that. Just let him chill.
Okay, can we move on to another topic we kind of discussed in the warm-up, which was, I think some people, so certainly milsim is a very variable term. It means different things to different people. I think the milsim community in the UK is in a bit of trouble at the moment. It seems to me it's just not it's not maybe as popular as it used to be. Do you think there's barriers to entry going into that?
I don't think milsim's any less popular. I think it's more popular. I think that a lot of the issue stems from the fact that milsim is different things to different people, and people are complaining that milsim is dead when in actual fact it's too alive.
Right. Okay.
There's too much.
It's not even special anymore, is it?
Yeah. There's people exceeding a realistic level of expectation, and there's only so much you can do with a milsim if you want it to be a commercial milsim. Now, if you want to do a non-commercial specialist military simulation, not milsim, although milsim's short for military simulation, I think it's become its own thing. But a military simulation, you can do that, but it's never going to be a commercial venture. But you're never going to
You're not going to make any money out of it.
Yeah, but you're not going to get everybody pleased all of the time. You can't have a milsim game that'll please every milsimer because milsim's too broad for too many different people.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I've done...
Go, babe.
Sorry. One of my favourite milsims was run by Smudge, that did combat action games, and his games weren't even what I would really even call an airsoft game. We've talked about this before. They were pretty much a civilian experience exercise. You went along, somebody told you what to do and stood next to you as they were almost like extras from the game, and they were watching it proceed, and they'd be like, what would you do in this scenario? This has happened. How are you going to react?
Directing.
And it was awesome. Yeah, I went away with so much more insight and knowledge into what I was pretending to be because of that experience. I'm not even going to call it a game. I'm going to call it an experience. But people were pissed off because they were like, well, that's not a milsim. You pulled us out there, and then that's not military. That's not military. And it was like, we're not. This is a milsim, but this is a simulation of a military training exercise, not a military operation.
Yeah.
It's different. And actually, you need to do these training exercises because they're really valuable. Because next time you do a game that's like an operation, you'll all be fucking locked down and real tight, and you'll know exactly what you're supposed to be doing. And that's how it works. But people were a bit weird about it.
Gadge has always had a really great idea for a milsim that he wants to run. And we're going to film it at some point, Gadge. Do you want to very briefly outline your? This is much more realistic than most airsoft games.
Ultimate Milsim, basically, you come along to my site, right, which is my house. You pay me like £120, and I tell you to basically dig a trench in the middle of nowhere and watch a house for like 24 hours. So you go and dig a house, and you shit in a bag, and you eat cold rations, and it pisses it down, and you come back, and then I bollock you because it's the wrong house. Thank you very much.
I think the £120 is far too cheap. You should probably give up your marriage and maybe have to have your house sold off and stuff as well.
Dog off camera.
The other thing is that one of the companies that's known for doing probably the most consistent milsims in airsoft history, and it was still going for a very, very long time, are not actually doing milsims.
No.
They'll tell you they don't.
I know who you're talking about.
We all know. Let's call it. It's Sterling, right?
Yeah, they're the benchmark for what is a for what is a milsim event, and they do great events, and they've been doing it for so long. They know what they're doing. But they tell you they're not doing milsim. They're doing like big organised themed games, scenarios, etc. They didn't even put a label on it.
No, they don't. And they have different.
Sterling event, isn't it?
Yeah, Sterling, and they have different names. They have theme games. They have simulation games. They have combat missions. They have role play games. They have, and they're very clear about what you're going to get as part of that package.
See, the games I used to run were like that. I used to basically run World War II games, and we say to people, this is actually a simulation of what it's like to be a squaddy. You may have missions that are boring. You may be asked to watch things. And it wasn't about shooting time and trigger time. It was about feeling you're a terrified squaddy in World War II. It was about being a US paratrooper in the middle of France. You don't know what you're doing. And there'd be 30 or 45-minute games, and they'd have like objectives that might be, you need to basically work out the sentry patterns of the Germans around this town.
Yeah.
You know,
it's kind of like escape. You know, the escape room things. You know, those experiences. That's what we're actually signing up for. Like a milsim game doesn't have to be a 36, 48-hour session. Why can't it be a 2-hour mental exercise, like a planning exercise or something like that? I know you're interested in the same idea as well, Gaz. Like, it doesn't have to be frontline military kind of reenactment. It could be, okay, so you've got to go through all this surveillance footage and identify the next guy for next weekend's operation to go and dig him out of a room, and you've got to pick the right guy.
Yeah, that's what I want to do.
If people are complaining that milsim's not milsim anymore because there's so many different aspects that they're looking from. So if people are used to going to Sterling events, I've done loads over the years, then something that CAG do, someone might complain about because that's not the milsim that they're used to, because they're calling Sterling milsim, when Sterling don't. We already established that. But then you could go to a CAG event and get used to what they have as a milsim, and then go to a Sterling event and think this isn't what milsim is. It depends what your base mark experience is. There's the things that we do. We don't do milsim. What I do is I run an exercise that puts you as close to doing a realistic exercise as possible. That's not. I wouldn't call that milsim because it's not necessarily what everyone expects it to be. There's no game to it. There's no. You don't have two sides and you shoot at each other. You've got one side and everyone's playing a scenario. So
I think the only realistic milsim Airsoft could ever really portray would possibly be very rudimentary World War I trench warfare. That's the only way you could make it at all realistic. Or you can go the other way around and use Airsoft as an addition to an experience that you're putting on.
Exactly.
Put people in that, and I know this is what you do. It's a bit of a leading statement by me, I know that. But there's more than just shooting stuff. There's more than just blasting the trigger away. And Airsoft becomes better than just a game when you can totally soak in that, like, it's more than just shooting BBs around. You don't need 100,000 BBs a weekend to have an amazing time with what you want to experience.
Gotcha.
So I think Airsoft, again, looking how Airsoft has changed, and Ben's hit the nail on the head there. So like when I started playing Airsoft, and Tom at the same time, probably you as well, Gaz, it was very much, you go skirmish, you shoot people. There was no plot. Sometimes they might say, oh, you're this team, you're doing this, you're the SAS versus like the Russians or whatever. But there was no story, and story is built slowly through Airsoft. And I think Milsim came in quite early. I remember Milsim events around about 2002, 2003. But I think what really broke the mold was the film sim, when people started doing things that were not supposed to be, you're a hardcore soldier. They're actually like, you want a little bit more out of Airsoft than just shoot people. You want a bit of story, but you don't really want to sit in a trench shitting in a bag for 2 days. And for me, that's the whole thing. So you get story, you get character, you get content, and it makes it a bigger world. And
is it that maybe we actually want highlight sim?
Yes, I find it really funny.
Do we want just the highlights?
People talk about, milsim. Then they go to an event, they don't eat rations, they take a cot and a duvet and a fucking pillow. You know, it's bollocks, isn't it? It's not milsim. You're not simulating being in the military. You're taking part in an experience, and if that experience involves a pillow and a duvet and a fold up camp bed, you're not taking that. That's just not the thing, right? So everything else also needs to be taken in moderation as well. Gaz,
do you know what? Do you know what's milsim with Airsoft? Every single Airsoft event, because if it's not milsim, it's not Airsoft by legal definition.
Oh, what I think's really milsim is sitting around a service station in combat.
So part of what
eating 8 burgers in an hour.
So part of what sparked this conversation, I was watching a thread on Facebook, and they were talking about, I'm not going to go to a milsim because I need £5,000 worth of nods. Night vision goggles, and we had a bit of a chat about this before we started. So again, I think Ben, you talked about it. Why does it need to be a 36-hour event that runs continuously overnight and there's fighting in the night? It doesn't have to be. Again, it's different names. But also, Gaz, you had some good points about even if there is night games, wearing £5,000 worth of night vision goggles, of course it's going to give you an advantage, but it's not necessary.
No.
Well, if it was really a simulation, why would you even fight in the night if you didn't have night vision goggles? If you were at a severe disadvantage, why would you bother fighting?
Ben, if everything can be fair, the British Army always train to operate at night, we sleep in the day. It's what we do.
That's just the pub training, isn't it?
Now, but if you exercise all the ops at night and sleeping's in the day.
But if you had no significant advantage to doing that, if you knew the enemy had night vision, that wouldn't be the case. Using the cover of darkness.
Yeah.
If the enemy has vision, better off fighting in the day where you can see what you're doing better.
So what I'm saying is the whole point is that if the British Army would do that because they know they have a technological advantage over the enemy at that period of time.
It's a training quality advantage as well. Even back as far as World War I or the Sudan, well-trained troops who know what they're doing at night can panic troops who don't know what they're doing at night, because night fighting is terrible. It's terrifying, and you need to have discipline and confidence in your kit. That's why we do it. It's not about night vision equipment. It's about being able to operate in the worst conditions.
Yeah, gaining an advantage in training to make the most of the advantage that you might have.
When I was a reservist soldier in the 90s, we had 2 Gen 2 weapon sights between 8 of us. So it wasn't everyone runs around with nods on, you know.
Oh yeah, of course. But then that's the advantage that you're looking to leverage, aren't you? It's go on.
Yes.
Radiophile just put up a point that we discussed before we went live, and that was what I said was you actually, when you go to a larger weekend event these days, we'll call it that for now to save the hassle, and you have night vision, you actually quite often you don't have full rule over the site because everybody's got white light on, and also because in Airsoft you've got people on both sides that have the same level of kit. It isn't asymmetric warfare that you would find in the scenario that you're generally trying to portray, so everyone switches to white light anyway. And generally, as soon as you enter a building and it goes loud, everyone's going to put white light on anyway. So,
Gaz, important thing there. Sorry. When I do themed Airsoft with Cold War, we have like maybe 1 or 2 Gen 1 sites for the weekend. And I remember once playing an event at the Sandpit, the UCAP site, and we spent 3 hours in an OP, which is minuscule by real military standards, looking at NATO through this horrible Soviet Gen 1 site to work out where their sentries were. But as soon as, like you say, as soon as you get into contact, they all had torches, there were lights. We don't operate in Airsoft at the distances real soldiers do. They're watching people at 800 metres, 1,000 metres or whatever, yeah. We're playing at 30 to 50 metres, so it's less relevant.
You can smell people before you can see them. No, it's one thing that I've always thought is probably one of the weirdest things, and we've talked about it in the past, Gage, is that like Airsoft games, the big falling down with it is that you know somebody's going to come and get you from that direction, roughly.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter what kind of day or night, you know somebody's going to probably come round that corner at some point, and they're not going to kick the wall in, they're not going to come through the fucking roof. You know they're coming to get you. So if you could actually simulate a game where you're sitting around eating a pizza, like, oh fuck, it's Wednesday afternoon and I'm watching Coronation Street, and my mates actually finally beat me at Airsoft from the weekend.
Which is what we've actually done in the past. We've actually done random events where the time of the final assault or the time of the actual decisive action to end whatever scenario there is has not been determined. So it's not like all Airsoft is generally forced engagement. You know that there's probably an equal amount of people on the other side to what you are. Everyone's going to want to shoot at each other, and that's what takes away from the more realistic aspect. So we've run events in the past where there's a possibility that there is not going to be a final decisive action that ends it. There's not going to be a conflict.
It's one thing I find weird, like in Airsoft, if you get into this like 50-50 kind of, he's down a corridor leaning around a doorway, he's down a corridor leaning around the doorway, it's a 50-50. Like, you could lean out at the wrong time and a BB could hit you. It doesn't really matter. There's no actual real skill involved. You don't want to get into that engagement. You want to get around and move around to a different point and leverage an advantage. There's some cheesy fucking patch or something like that says if you're in a fair fight, you're not fighting fair or some shit like that. I can't remember what it is.
Yeah, if you're in a fair fight, you've done something wrong, yeah.
If you're blasting down the same corridor, like, you might as well just pick up and fuck off backwards and try again from a different direction. It doesn't really make any... You're not in an advantageous position. You're not in a... That's the whole point of strategy and the whole point of military simulation, is to bring an advantage to bear, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, Ben, like, you know, going back to what you're saying about that thing we talked about. So the situation was, I think Tom might know, but basically our old team were being trained by former Special Forces guys to clear rooms. We all had, like, you know, shoulder a door open, the first guy and whatever. And the thing is, whenever you use that in Airsoft, you're there at a 4-hour event, and those guys know in the next hour to 2 hours, someone's going to break in this room.
If not 7 minutes.
Yeah, but in reality, if you look at like the Iranian embassy siege that the guy who trained me was at, was a guy called John Mack, who's not with us anymore, bless him. But when they did that, those terrorists had been in that building for 3 or 4 days, right? They were having food brought into it. So, 6 days, in fact. They were basically...
There's a film about that, isn't it?
Yeah. But yeah, the point is, nobody said, do you know what, we're going to do a 6-day milsim, right? At some point, the guys in black are going to kick the door down, right? Yeah, that could have gone on for 13 days or 26 days. Those guys were getting bored and arguing with themselves and sick of food. So when they did kick the doors in and blow the frame charges in the windows and stuff, it was a surprise. In Airsoft, you can never have the element of surprise because you're keyed up. Even on a 2 weekend day, you're keyed up for 2 days. Like, I've been on military exercise for a week or 2 weeks, and you switch off after a while, and you have to have people booting you up the arse, switch on, Harvey, get moving, you know?
Wait until they're sitting there with their thumbs up their asses, and then go and make the most of that.
Yeah.
The way we did it a couple of years ago was we were running a siege scenario, and it ran for, I think, around 48 hours. We spent the first full day doing so many stand twos because of various things going on in the building. Because we ran it as the actors and everybody were in a building. And in actual siege, we actually have to take food into them and all sorts. But because whenever they come to a window, the snipers would report that there was movement, and then everyone would get onto the vehicles and move to a forward position. Or a phone call would come through to the negotiators. Negotiators would stand everybody through. We did that And it was a summer's day.
Actually doing proper sniper roles. That's amazing.
We did that for 24 hours. They were constantly being stood to, stood down, stood to, training in between it, like doing rotations. They never got to fire a shot. And then at some point when they're absolutely fucked on Sunday morning, it was like 30 degrees C as well. Sunday mid-morning, all of a sudden, a body got thrown off the top, and they got stood to again. They were like, oh, we're going to get stood down again by this point. Do you know what I mean? And they didn't actually have to go and carry on the action. So they got so used to that mundane action of get in the car, go to the forward standing point, then get stood down, go back to base, sitting around drinking coffee. And that happened so many times. And all of a sudden, they actually had to get their legs in movement. And that was good because that took them out of what they're used to.
Yeah.
They weren't allowed to just go and shoot the place up. To be fair, they did the building in really good time as well. But I think they just wanted to go over the point.
One thing I thought was I did a couple of events and spoke to a couple of guys, and they talked to me about this idea of the limit of exploitation.
Yeah.
Which was really, really interesting. And it was like, people think that, like, because of films, like a couple of guys will go in and kick every single door in a whole hotel. And this limit of exploitation principle was like, you've probably got 15 to 20 minutes in you at the very most. Yeah. After that, you just cannot continue to be as switched on as you need to be to go through doors. You will be mentally and physically fucked. You can't keep going. So there's, I said, if somebody was embedded so deeply into a room that you or into a building that you couldn't get out, you'd either flatten the building or just not even fucking try and get involved in it. Like, only when it's in an opportune point.
You do what the Russians do, and just not
tactics. But
just look at what the Russians do. If they got known terrorists in a building and they're not going to risk their own lives, they just blow the fucking thing up. Yeah. It's just like whatever.
There was a 300-room, 3-story double building with 6 bad guys, 9 hostages, and of course they had various injuries as well. So all the hostages couldn't walk, and 35 guys. They had LOEs, so they weren't allowed to just go between floors and this and the other because it's hard work when you're doing it properly like that. It's hard work. So 300 rooms, 3 floors, 2 buildings, 6 bad guys, 9 hostages. Took them 7 minutes and 28 seconds.
Oh,
clear and
I see what you've just.
You just worked it out, Ben.
Sorry. I see what you've just changed there.
Okay. Speaking of that, though, I'm gonna need to do the same. So I think we've been running for nearly 2 hours, over 2 hours, 2 hours 20 minutes. So I think we're gonna start looking at winding the stream up, mainly because I need a wee myself. But I think this is a subject we can come back to because it's really interesting, which is about which kind of just been talking about, and we'll find a more refined version of it. But I think it's a really, really great idea for a full live stream on this. So I'd like to thank my guests, Gaz, and Captain Slackbatter, otherwise known as Ben. I'd like to thank my audience. Thanks, guys. Thanks for turning up. I know there's actually quite a lot of you, but we need to get on with the rest of our lives right now as well.
I was in for the long round.
So we'll definitely get back on this topic because it's really interesting. And just as Sean turns up with some extra beer. Okay, so thanks, guys. Thanks for the stream. I'm going to shut down now, and we'll carry on another day because this is obviously a really interesting subject. Thanks very much.
Catch you shortly.